It is 6:15. We appear to have a quorum, so we can begin. Just put that down. All right, we will call the December 10th, 2018 Joint School Board SAU 44 meeting to order at 6:17, it looks like. And we'll start with a roll call. Shane Wells. Dave Ruth.
Yes.
Amy Hanavan.
Here.
Brian Winslow.
Here.
Keith McGuigan.
Here.
Christine Gabriel.
Here.
Catherine Brosnan.
Here.
Susan Levinson. Here. Rosalind Chavda.
Here.
Kelly Gordon.
Here.
Bruce Patrick.
Here.
Debbie Henriksen.
Here.
Misty Lowe.
Here.
Erica Helm.
Here.
Carrie McMahon. All right, we have 4 in Stratford, 5 from Northwood, Nottingham, and 4 in Northwood. We do have a quorum seated, and we can begin. Tonight, what we have is our budget hearing. We'll start with that. And what I propose is that we will recess this meeting, entertain a motion to go into our public hearing. Motion, second, and vote. And then we'll be in our public hearing. We'll complete that. By statute, we have to discuss the revenues and the expenses and the full budgets for the SAU 44 and for the preschool. And just before we go in, I wanted to let you know that your audit committee did meet, and in light of the fact that we need to discuss revenues in the public hearing, we will be mentioning the unassigned fund balance and divulging during the public hearing some of the options that we may have around the use of that. Your audit committee has met several times. They did meet last Friday with the auditors. They had the opportunity to speak with the partner, Mr. Campo. And one of the questions that we had was around unassigned fund balance and how it can be used. Based on that, discussions were had today with Mr. Rooning, Mr. Campo, and Attorney Gordon Graham. And so the administration will be bringing forth some scenarios should the board decide to use an unassigned fund balance. So some scenarios that would be required around, I guess, accounting presentation, if you will. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention so that when it comes up in the hearing, everyone's on the same page. Do we have any other questions before we go into the public hearing? If we go section by section, highlight everything, give the totals, talk about the revenues, are you comfortable with that, or is there another approach you would like to take in presenting your budgets?
Line by line is good.
I had said section by section.
Section by section is fine.
Okay, and if there are any questions or anything on the lines, they can be raised. Now, the purpose of a public hearing is to entertain questions from the community members. So I would say that perhaps what we could do is go by section, and at the end of each section, if there are questions, entertain them at that time, by section, from community. Does that work for everyone? You're good? Yes, Mr.
Point of order, do we have a list of the people who will hear from the public, so that will be entered into the
What
minutes?
we should do is to just have a sheet of paper circulate so that the secretary can capture the names of the folks that are here. Thank you, Mrs. Helm. And if there are questions from folks, we certainly, that's the purpose of a hearing. So we'll look at it at the end of each section. And if you could just say your name and your town.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
All
I
right.
make a motion that we suspend the meeting and go into our public hearing.
Second.
Okay? All right then, all those in favor? All right, so that's a unanimous. So we are now in our public hearing. And if you go to your package, you will find your budgets that will be discussed.
I didn't have a budget in my packet.
We've got the monthly financial review,
Proposed.
SAU 44
Oh, you know what, it is,
preschool.
it's just not, you're right, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. Oh, it's after the, okay,
It was
there's
just
a,
after the.
yeah, there's a little interruption in paper there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in our public hearing. Okay, so we'll start with our SAU 44 preschool budget, which begins on your packet on page 18. Actually, I'm sorry.
24, isn't it?
So Sue, what are we starting with?
Preschool.
The SAU 44 preschool budget, which I have is page 17.
Those are your financials.
17?
33.
I think we have it as.
Page 33.
Okay.
You have 33. Yeah, 33.
All right.
Do you have any more
Right,
copies?
17. It's either 17 or 33.
Mr. Byrne is making some for you. Mr. Byrne is making some for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, when everyone's there, if we could just get to that page and then let me know when you're ready.
So you're on 17, you're on the wrong page.
33, okay.
It's got the same.
That's the monthly,
Oh, those are the
that's the monthly review.
Okay, there's just a little confusion because you've got separate financials at the front of the packet for all the
Page
entities.
33 we should do.
Okay. So the SAU board has been working on proposed budget information since September. We've had supplementary requests that came in September as well. So that's kind of the history, and every meeting we've gone through and discussed. We've had backup paperwork on software and salaries and so forth. So at this time, who would like to go through and just discuss the preschool? Would you like to present by section on that?
Do you want to do revenues first?
Yes, please.
So your revenues and your per district portion are listed out in the notes. Based on your 3-year average, Northwood is 34.92% of the preschool cost. Nottingham is 39.62 and Stratford is 25.46. That's based on your 3-year average of your students. Below that, we're not anticipating any tuition from other schools at this point. And then we updated your revenues based on where we feel like we are now and entered your preschool tuition from parents and updated that. There's a preschool reimbursement from Northwood for 1-to-1 in the budget, and there's a preschool reimbursement from Nottingham, 1-to-1 in the budget. And then, so the proposed budget in revenues is $480,415.78.
Would you mind just giving the total for each of the towns so that we just have that reflected in the
Yep,
minutes?
Northwood is $146,104.54. Nottingham is $165,769.23. And Stratford is $106,524.10.
Just let the record reflect that the community members present are receiving copies of the budgets. Thank you, Mr. Wynn.
You ready for me to go on to the next section? So your salaried child find preschool coordinator in the note, this represents 15% of the assistant student service director with a salary of up to a 3% increase.
And this is a new representation in this budget because of a change in role.
Yes, we combined the preschool coordinator and the assistant student services director into one position.
And 50% of it is in the preschool now as opposed to 100% sitting in the SAU budget.
Correct. salary teacher preschool. Align compensation with Northwood, Nottingham, and Stratford, compensation for 2 teachers, and it lists the salaries for the employees, $49,055. And then that corresponds to your budget number.
I have a question on that one. I'd like to hand out some information, some historical information about that line for the last 2
Okay,
years.
we can hand it out, but right now we're gonna go through and, for the purpose of the hearing,
Okay,
state everything by statute, and then we'll have full discussion.
okay.
Oh,
I'd like
so
to
we'll discuss
explain.
each line later.
Okay.
That's my understanding
Okay.
does anyone have a different understanding of the hearing? We certainly entertain the community questions at the time, we'll review all material, but we'll be voting on the budget and making changes to the budget after the hearing.
Okay.
And everyone, when we begin our deliberation on the budget, does anyone have any concern with that, or think there should be a different approach?
What I'd like to add, okay, the paperwork that I am handing out, I think that it would be helpful for the public to see it too. It's the historical information for the last 2 years, minutes from 2017 and 2016, with the very large raises and increases that we gave to the preschool. So that this is from the minutes, so everyone understands what's happening.
Okay, that's fine, so we'll pass that around. Now, is there anyone here that has any concern about taking this information up while we deliberate, as opposed to in the hearing? Or would you like to take it up now? I think the hearing is to, any thoughts, concerns?
Just so I understand, we're reading through this and we're going line by line, have no problem with that.
Mhm.
But at the very end, then we were gonna have discussions because nothing here is final, like an up to 3% on a
Right.
line hasn't been finalized, so we will do that after
We would
read
do
through
any
it.
number of things, whatever the board
Okay.
would like to do, but we'll close the public hearing after we've divulged everything
Okay.
about these by statute, and then we will deliberate, and at that time, we would take into consideration publicly any other items with the budget. We're all comfortable with that? Okay. You good? All right. So we'll
Next
continue
slide.
with the expenses.
Next line is your salary for your speech pathologist. On page 2. Are your salary aides preschool? Do you remember we had discussions about how things were apportioned and what should be in there, so we added those pair hours. Understand there's also a revenue line that corresponds to some of those hours that are billed out to the district. Substitutes in preschool, there we reduced that. And the portion of the occupational therapist salary is in there. And then, of course, the portion of the salary for the finance manager is in there, and has always been in there.
That's the 15%, right, roughly?
Yes.
Okay.
Next is your benefits section.
Can we just, we'll identify the totals for that section and then offer anybody in the community any questions on
Sure.
these sections.
Sure. So, your total increase is $22,786.48, or 9%. Any questions?
So is this my time to chime in about the proposed salaries for the preschool teachers?
This is the salary section.
Okay, Eric Almanzon, I'm from Stratford, and in looking through this, I have noticed that since 2016, preschool teacher salaries, if this year's was to go through, are going to be on track to increase by approximately 20%, which is a very high number. Am I understanding that correctly?
Okay, so do we have any thoughts on that? You're talking cumulatively since 2016?
Yes, yes. And the only thing we could do about it this year is the 3%. I understand that, but historically, over the last few years, there's been very large increases in pay.
Sue, I have a quick question. So his point that without having all of the historical data and without us having a discussion, he's at a disadvantage in asking his question. And you're posing a good question.
Right. No, I understand I'm at a disadvantage, and guess I'd like the 10-cent tour on why
Yeah.
those salaries have had to increase so much over the last 3
I think
years.
that would,
So I think it would be, yeah, we'll certainly entertain these questions and answer them fully and take whatever discussion we need to do that.
And Eric, what happened was 2 years ago, it was brought to our attention that our preschool teachers were, because they're not in a teachers union, were not keeping up with other elementary education teachers in our district. So we gave them, you can see, the first year in 2016, we gave one teacher $3,000 raise and another one a $3,500 raise plus a 3% increase. Then people felt that we still weren't close enough to where they should be, so then the following year, we gave each teacher a $2,000 raise and a 3% increase. This year, what is built into the budget for the dollar amount, not just the percentage?
Before that gets answered, can I just clarify something you just said?
Yes.
I think, from what I heard from what you just said, you said, we gave them so much that first year, and then the next year, we felt like we still weren't close enough. It was my understanding the first year that we knew we weren't going to be close enough and that we were going to need to do this over the course of 3 or 4 years because we weren't in a place where we were going to give them everything that they were due in that first year because it was too much. So we were trying to spread it out over the course of the years.
so
So
really
just-
there was a
so
dollar
I'm-
amount and we broke it up into 2 or 3 years.
Correct. And,
Yeah.
I think that there's some maybe not clearness whether it should have been 2 years or 3 years. Some people may have felt that after 2 years they were caught up. But I just want to know what the dollar amount is in this budget.
Okay, so we'll go to the administration then to give the details of this budget line.
I did not prepare an exact dollar amount per person, so you'd have to give me a second on that. What I had done was
Just do it all together.
altogether the increase. Well, it's clear there. It shows what it is altogether for this one. Let me just pull it up in front of me because it's a total for this year of $8,603.46 is what the increase would be.
$8,603.46 in increase for 2
For
positions.
2
That's-
teachers.
That's correct.
So is that a $4,300 increase per teacher this year?
Well, again, like I didn't do it per teacher. I did pretty close to that. I can give it to you in 1 second. What I had done was comparing them to the districts. But if I look at one teacher right now, the raise would be for $4,049.44 for employee 1. If you give me a second, I can give you employee 2 because I didn't break it out that way.
Were these preschool teachers being paid 20% less than the going rate?
Yes, they were. That's why we did
For
that.
years,
Actually, more
and we're
than
not doing any kind of retroactive.
I can,
No, I
give you,
understand.
I can give you a little history and jump in if I'm inaccurate. So there was a portion of time, it was a period of time, I think in the, somewhere between 2005 and 2010, that salary increases in the SAU, which affected preschool, were 0%. The effect of that, when it came to the teaching staff, is there was a growing gap between what the preschool, special education, regular education teachers were making and their counterparts in the districts. So at that point, we averaged the 3, like placed them on step in Northwood, step in Nottingham, step in Stratford.
Yep.
And then every year we take an average to see what the gap is and whether we're closing it.
Okay, so I'm not trying to take money out of anybody's pocket or advocating for that. I'm just a 20% raise over a few years is a very significant raise. So if nothing else, I would like, as a member of the public, to have a satisfactory answer as to the reason for that, and that just comes.
It is a good question, Eric, and I'd like to say that one of the issues was that each district has a different step scale for
Yep.
the teacher salary. So if you do an average, it ends up that the preschool teachers now will be, if we follow this and approve this, will be being paid more than the average Stratford school teacher on the same step, because our steps aren't the same as Nottingham and so
Actually,
forth.
one will make more and one will make less in this year.
Okay.
Mr. Ruth,
A statement and probably a question that may help the public. One, is this program we have for pre-K, is this mandated by the state or all 3 towns decided we should do it?
It's actually mandated by the federal government and the state.
Okay, my second question would be, how much is the anticipated or actual revenue we receive from the federal government and the state for this program?
through IDEA?
Well, you get 14,000 in IDA funds. You get nothing from the state.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, nothing.
So,
Starts in kindergarten.
in your packet in October 22nd, there was a page regarding the salary schedule. Just to clarify, when you say preschool is mandated by the state, are you saying child find is mandated, or?
Child find and preschool. Well, you could have you're required to give preschool special educations to your special education services to your identified students.
Okay.
Right. And that's in the state rules, and it's also in the federal rules.
What
Now,
are the ages? Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
well, child find starts at 2.5. Preschool starts at 3. I lost my train of thought. You interjected with a good question.
You were talking about, you were required by the state to provide special education services starting with preschool.
Right. Now, some districts, very small districts that can't combine their efforts, sometimes pay tuition to private preschools and then bring the special education services into that. You collectively have enough of a population to use a more effective model, which is we set a target at about 50% typicals and about 50% students with disabilities, because you need peer models and you don't want to imbalance that. And then we charge tuition to our typical parents unless they can demonstrate need, and then we have scholarships. So there's some revenue that's generated that way too.
Yes, Mr.
Can I
McGuigan?
ask Mr. Mooney to expand on what the qualifications are required for these positions as preschool teachers?
Well, because you use an early childhood model, you have to have your early childhood ed, which is a pre-K to 3 certification. And then in addition to that, because we have special education students in there, you have to have a special education certification also, and both our teachers have both.
And one also has a master's degree.
Correct.
The only thing I did not do is answer Debbie's question fully,
Okay.
which the second employee would have a raise slated for $4,526.86. And with both those numbers, they would still be below the average of the SAU.
But 3 districts.
3 districts, right.
Both would be below the CBA.
3 district average, that's...
The 3 district average, but not in necessarily the individual districts.
No, as
No, in
Mr.
Stratford, 1 would be above and 1 would be below.
Yes, and I have those amounts as well.
Okay. Does that answer your
Yes,
question?
but is preschool versus elementary teachers apples to apples?
Well,
What-
I
wait,
encourage.
wait, wait,
I would
wait,
encourage
wait,
anybody.
wait,
Yeah,
wait.
I would encourage anybody
I
who
mean, I see.
Wait, the 1 degree is
K to 3,
K to
pre-K to 3,
and it's called
early childhood,
early childhood, and the other is,
special education,
right?
which
and,
is K to 12,
okay.
pre-K to 12.
Okay, and then what most of the teachers in the elementary schools have is elementary ed?
Well, they can either have a K to 6 or a K to 8, which is an elementary ed,
Do,
or special ed is the same.
do I see a 145-day school year for preschool?
You see 4 days a week with no prep time or no lunch time, and then a day on Fridays to do meetings, child find, and preparation. So you don't see 145,
Oh, okay,
You don't
I
see
see,
100.
I see that for the paras, so that is,
right, because they don't work those days.
they don't work those
Right,
days. So
right.
the preschool teachers still have a 185-day year, 180.
180, yep.
Okay,
Yep. But their week is a little different
okay, set up differently.
because they have 2 sessions. They have a morning and an afternoon session with no time in between.
Okay.
Mr. Winslow has a comment or question.
I just want to make a comment. Throughout the district, if you look at teachers pre-K through 8th grade, it's really hard to start comparing apples to apples. If you're looking at a 7th grade science teacher to like a 1st grade classroom teacher, the contract is there, the days are the same, but the responsibilities differ based on the assignment. I think it's hard to really compare. You know what I mean? The weekly.
I understand.
Sure.
I understand that.
I'd
I
also
know.
like to note that Mr. Bruning's explanations are certifications, but I think both of these teachers have bachelor's degrees, and I think one has a master's degree. So,
I'm
I
not,
just wondered.
yeah, I understand that.
Okay, so we've gone through the revenue section. Were there any questions
Maybe
from
contracted.
anyone on the revenue section? We've gone through the salary expense section. There's a question on the preschool salaries. Any further questions there? Do you feel your questions have been
Nope,
answered?
you've answered my questions, thank you.
Okay. All right, so anything else from the board? Yes, Mr. Patrick?
What are the hours for the preschool? You said a morning session and an afternoon session. Are they the same as the 3 districts?
You mean total?
This was you.
Or
They
what
started-
time they start? What time they
They start at 8 in the morning, and the morning session goes till 11:30. 11. And then the afternoon session goes from 11:30 to
2:30.
2:30.
And when we say 11:30, that's getting them on the bus. So even though it's ending at 11, they're getting them on the bus. They're taking the next ones off the bus as they're getting off, coming in. So and when they end at 2:30, that's when they're finishing up the rest of what they're doing for that day, closing it up for the rest of the day.
And
So
that's Monday through Thursday.
So your Stratford bus may pick up at 11, but it's also dropping off at the same time. There's students that are coming in. So, answer your question?
Anything else? Okay, so we'll continue on with our expense section on preschool.
Yep, the next is your benefits section. You've got a buyout that's been adjusted. Your health insurance is in there for the percentages of your employees and then your guaranteed maximum rate. Dental insurance is in there, your life insurance, FICA for your teachers, FICA for your pathologists. Your retirement rates is 7.8% because they're teachers. And then your FICA for your aides. Any questions on page 2?
Continues into the top of page
Yep.
3.
I got a question. Who's the finance manager for the preschool?
Mr. Carlson, 15% of your SAU, 15% of your SAU finance manager is included in the preschool because he does all your billings and tuition payments, and
And his salaries in the other budget?
85% of his salary is in the other budget. And I think it's always been that way. On to page 3. Again, just a continuation of your benefits, your FICA, your dental, your life insurance, your portion of your FICA for your OT, portion of your retirement for your OT, the FICA for the finance manager, 15% of it, and retirement. So that brings that total to $11,158.01.
So the proposed budget for 2020 is $146,447.01,
Oh, I'm sorry, I did the increase.
which is an increase of $11,158.01, and it is an 8.25% increase. And OT, just to clarify, is for an occupational therapist. I think that covers everything. And we've got all the different rates in here. The New Hampshire retirement system rates are different depending upon the role of the employee.
Right.
and those are set, and,
By the state.
in other words, a sunk cost to us.
Mhm.
Do we have any questions around benefits? Does the board have any additional questions on benefits? Right?
There's a note stuck in here. So anyway, next section is mileage. There's $200 for mileage if there's travel. General supplies actually we reduced, so your note is incorrect.
Mr. Roy,
Yeah.
on the mileage, on 16, 17, $28.89, the next year went to 200 exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Is that given out as a stipend?
No, that's per mile. Current rate's 0.545,
Did it get 200 exactly?
apparently, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Well,
Okay.
We use the IRS rate is used,
yes, each year they reset it.
we set for the IRS.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is curious.
So it says,
That is curious, though. You know.
okay, so the mileage section of the budget is budgeted $200. It's a 0% increase.
General supplies, we shifted that to your IDEA grant for this next year, so we reduced that line. That note is incorrect.
So the note will say that IDEA
Yeah, yeah,
will pay for this.
yeah. You write that, Nate?
Hey, I've got it.
Yeah. Same with your books and manipulatives. We can purchase those out of another source. And same with your software.
So a grant source.
Yeah.
So line 25, 1200, 56100. General supplies has $1 on it. It's a $3,018.26 decrease because it will be paid for through the IDEA grant. General supplies, books and manipulatives, again, $1 on the line, a $249 decrease as it will be paid for through a grant. Books and manipulatives, same thing. Line 1200, 56500, $1 budgeted for a $299 decrease because it will be paid for through a grant.
Next is your contracted services speech. Not only do you have a 5-day-a-week speech pathologist, but we also pay for what used to be a day and a half a week from the Stratford Learning Center to do the child find evaluations because the speech and teachers are teaching while those evaluations are going on. Based on an assessment of student need and a projection, they've reduced that line by $83,1626, so it's going from $27,993 to $676.74.
So I have a question.
Yes?
The grants, those 3 lines that we have $1 on each line, did we get an increase in our IDA grant allotment? Or
No,
taking
for the
it from
preschool you have
somewhere
about $14,000, so when we look at the supplies and those 3 lines and add it to covering the PT, that takes up pretty much the preschool allocation. So there's no increase, it's always been about that.
Where, I know, but we didn't have it on this line. Where did we used to put it? The rest of the money? Those lines, obviously, we didn't pay for with grants because we budgeted.
Right,
for
you
them.
budgeted for
So
it.
what,
So what happened when
Where we
you
taking
shifted,
it?
so what you used to do was when you had a contracted service doing your child find and preschool coordination, right? You used a portion of your IDEA funds to cover that based on a budgeting error that happened before I got here. Does that just make sense? Do you remember this? So when we shifted to an employee, it opened up those grant funds to purchase your equipment, your supplies, and your PT. So it's a little easier to do than try to have a piece here, piece here, piece here, and plus it covers your, your supplies, your equipment, your software, and your PT. So.
Mr. McGuigan?
Yeah, sorry, to go back to the previous page for 1 second. I just flipped back to see what our,
What page is that?
34? What line would you like to look at, Mr.
the
McGuigan?
mileage again, I was just looking at that. So I flipped back to page 18 in our packet, which I was curious what our mileage was so far this year.
Oh, page 18, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you,
Yeah.
just to compare, see what happened here. And I noticed a line in there in our current budget of OT mileage preschool
Mm-hmm.
for an amount of $200, and that's not in the proposed budget.
Right,
Just wondering
because
what's
do you
going on.
remember last year we were budgeting? We were budgeting for preschool, and I said, I don't even know why we have, it was sort of like an epiphany at the table. I said, I don't even know why we have OT mileage in here. The OT splits time between upstairs and downstairs. And it was too late to take it out last year, so I took it out this year.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. So before we move on to the next page, do we have any questions on the expense lines we just covered from mileage through contracted services on page 35? Any questions there?
No, I was gonna ask about the dollar lines, but
It's so we keep,
that got answered. It just shuffled
keeps the
around
cost,
basically.
well, it keeps the cost, so we try really, there's two answers. Some people would say it's the cost center you need to have money in and not the individual lines. To us, that's an irrelevant conversation. It's about tracking history.
Right,
So we have to have a dollar and to be able to track. If we don't, then it makes it hard to budget year to year accurately.
right.
And
Okay.
if you did for some reason need the line, if it had nothing on it, and we hadn't, discussed it at a hearing and so forth, then you couldn't use it, you couldn't do it, so. All right, moving on then to page 36, continuing with the preschool
Yep.
2020
So
expenses.
Yep, so our contracted services, not only did you have a reduction in your usage, we also shifted that portion to the remaining IDA, so your contracted service line ends up going from 42,175 in this year's budget to 19,677.74 in next year's budget, for a decrease of $22,497.26. Any questions on the contracted services?
And there are no benefits associated with that. So
Yeah, well, they're rolled into the price you pay per hour
Right.
for the contracted service. Next is staff development workshops. We kept it at the $2,000 amount. You can see that your prior year actuals, $1,400 and $1,500 and $23.40. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So on the staff development, since we're under preschool, is that strictly for the two preschool teachers?
Yes.
So they're approximately getting $1,000 each for PD?
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. Go ahead. You've got more detail than I do at this point.
It also includes their speech therapist that's in there. So you have a speech therapist who can.
So we're providing professional development for speech therapists we contract?
We have an in-house speech
Oh, I
therapist for the
apologize, the
pres-
OT and, okay,
Right.
thank
Yeah.
you.
So
So that's 3 people
that's correct.
that have access to 2,000.
Yes, and our preschool coordinator can utilize some of that as well, if it's only a preschool setting that they would be participating in. So you have the access of 4 people using that.
Then there's also the possibility, if there's a child-specific need that they need specific training as, we cover that in supplementary aids and services in the IEP, and then apportion that to IDEA.
And are there separate grants available for professional development for these professionals?
No,
Okay.
no. It's all in your,
Grant, the IDEA grant.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Generally, this covers, they go to one, I can't even remember the name of it, but they go to one like preschool workshop together in the spring, and this covers the majority of that.
So, are you referring to like the Title IIA grant and Title
I was
II?
just wondering about professional development grants.
Yeah, no Title II for the preschool. That's all your individual district allocated. That's different.
Okay.
Yeah, none of your grant funds would be used. Your IDEA funds can be used, but any of your other individual grant funds, that doesn't fall under the definition of use of those funds.
Okay.
Any more questions on that section? Postage, level funded for $100. Same with advertising.
150, so the advertising is budgeted for 150?
Mm-hmm. Your rent increase is in there, based on your new lease.
So we've got $24,140 proposed, which is a $474 increase, based on a 2% increase in the lease arrangement with Northwood School District, because the preschool is in their building.
Next is liabilities and workman's comp. Basically, that's an estimate at this point. We don't know because we don't have usage yet. So that's $100.
Any questions up to this point on this page?
I have a quick question on that rental increase. I'll ask it because the Northwood Board is here. You guys, the Northwood Board has increased the rent for the preschool in their district. Could I ask what that is based on?
Mr. Ruth?
The Northwood, we rent that building, it includes all the utilities, heat, water, all the
Okay,
electricity.
utilities go up. Yep,
everything.
I understand that. Okay, yep, I'm good.
Any further questions on these? Okay, moving on.
Page 5, just begin your telephone line. Budgeted $840. Your information access fees. So there's some swinging. New equipment again. We've shifted that out, and we don't really see that we need anything. And then new equipment furniture is $800 budgeted.
So in the new equipment preschool, there's just the dollar placeholder,
Yes,
and no budgeted amount prior years as well.
right.
Furniture budgeted for $800, which is holding steady.
Mm-hmm. And then $1 in your replacement furniture line. I think we just replaced some tables and whatnot last year. Maintenance and repairs. We put $500 in there. We never really tend to use it. Most of your maintenance and repairs are covered by your landlord. However, if something broke and you needed to have it fixed, that is preschool property, we'd have to do that. Moving expenses, just a carryover line with $1 that's been there since I arrived. So that's $1. And then that starts summer school and ESY. Get ready to talk about that.
Any questions up to this point on expenses? Nothing? Okay. So extended school year.
Extended school year, you can see we budgeted $2,700. If you look in 16-17, you came close to that. Seems to be there. Salary OT preschool, we just put $200 in there based on whether we have OT needs. And then we have salary summer OT for Northwood because there's additional need there. And then the aid for 1848. And then the FICA, and New Hampshire retirement system lines. So last year was $5,009 budgeted. This year there's $6,552.55 budgeted for an increase of $1,543.65.
It's a 30.82% increase on that section for the summer school. Any questions in that area? Any board? Sorry.
Pardon me, is the paraprofessional child specific or programmatic?
If it's child specific, it'll show up as its own line assigned to a town. If it's a
Okay.
program paraprofessional, the
Thank
salary summer aid, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
That's the program para.
So that's the one additional summer school, and that's
Yeah.
bringing it up $264.
Yeah.
I have one other question.
Mhm.
On the bottom of page 5, the summer school ESYs, how are those numbers determined? I know if they were part of a CBA, there's probably rules around.
You mean how much are they paid?
Yeah,
an
how,
hour? Is that
well,
right?
I didn't know how this is 2,700.
It's $25 an hour,
Okay.
plus an hour of prep a week. Is that correct?
I think we were up to an hour and a half.
An hour and a half prep a week during the ESY period.
Mr. McGuigan,
So
I
it's-
think had a question. I'm sorry, we'll come
Yes,
back
I just
to
wanted
you.
to ask about the town-specific costs, like the OT for Northwood.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make clear, that's actually billed back to Northwood,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the increase here is really just on paper to the preschool because it'll be offset by revenue.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Lowe, you had,
That's okay.
Go ahead.
I have a question.
what, no, I'm just, Mrs. Lowe is finishing her one
Sorry,
question.
I was making a note. Thank you for that because I'm still trying to understand the process of all this. I guess you answered me. It's hourly about the ESY.
Yeah.
So it's not a percentage based on salary.
No.
I was asking because the preschool salary is in question, and I didn't know if that number would go up if the salaries went up.
Not at this time. It's our standard. Individual districts may decide to increase or decrease teacher pay for ESY. I mean, for extended school year or summer activities. And we stick with a $25 an hour rate.
Thank you.
So does the summer population change?
Yeah, it's all based on regression and recoupment. So,
So the percentage for each district, would that differ than it is during the year?
I mean, it could. You'd have to look at who qualified meeting the standard,
And if a child moved in,
then you just take what they've already had their paper. Well, every kid in the state should have their paperwork done by April.
well, I'm just
Right.
saying that's another way it could fluctuate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions on this? Mr. Wells, I didn't know if you were, did you have, I thought I maybe saw your hand raised a little bit. Nope, you're good? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I get everyone. All right. Moving on.
So then there's your preschool miscellaneous expenses, which our plan is to use for your graduation this year, because we reduced the other line. Some years it goes unused. Actually, we see the last 2 years it has. So that's $300. So your total expenses are $415,78. Last year was $471,154.26 for an increase of $9,261.52 or 1.97%. But then if you jump down below, when you look at your revenues as opposed to your expenses, you're looking at a $4,767 increase.
So some of those offsetting costs that Mr. McGuigan, that will be mentioned, that will be billed back,
Yep.
make up the
Tuition from
delta
parents.
between the $9,261.52 increase net of those revenue items and bill backs. It will be $47.67 net increase
Yes.
in expenses. Does the board have any statements or questions around this preschool proposed budget? Good? Mr. Winslow? Good?
No,
Good.
sorry.
All right, do the community members have any questions before we move on to the SAU budget?
I'm good.
You're okay? All right then. So now we will move into the SAU budget, and we will again go through the sections, highlighting the items that have changed within the sections, and just noting revenue and expense. And that's page 24. No, I'm just letting them know.
Okay. Sorry.
24. So, okay.
Is everybody ready? So if you look at your allocation, Northwood is at $382,729.31, which is up $3,224.54 from the previous year. Your district appropriation in Nottingham is $511,383.25, which is up from $481,217.71 the previous year for an increase of $30,165.54. Your appropriation in Stratford was $398,891.87, up from $383,822.52 for an increase of $15,069.35. Your indirect cost revenue, we anticipated at $15,000, and along with your reimbursement revenue that you get from Co-Brown for managing their portion of their Title II allocation. So we derive the district appropriations by taking that $16,000 and dividing it out and subtracting it from your individual allocations to make the numbers match. 13090043 will be hopefully the number on the last page that we go through.
So the proposed budget revenues are $1,309,004.43, netting the indirect cost revenue and the grant coordinator reimbursement for $48,459.43 increase to the individual towns, with Northwood paying 29.6%, Nottingham paying 39.55%, and Stratford paying 30.85%. Before we move off of revenues, does the board have any questions about how those were arrived at, or any questions on revenue? Do the community members have any questions on revenue? Okay. I'm sorry. At this time, we bring in this piece. So as I mentioned to you before we went into the public hearing, and because we have to disclose revenue fully and any decisions the board may make during the hearing, your audit committee met. Your audit committee talked with the auditors, and one of the questions was around unassigned fund balance. There has been a proposal in prior meetings to pay for some of our expenditures, specifically our software, out of our unassigned fund balance. It could happen two ways. It could happen out of our current budget, which would bring our current budget to an overspend, or it could come out of this budget. And so what the auditors are saying is that for this budget, you would need to bring in the revenue line, and I'll let Mr. O'Sullivan and Mr. Rooney discuss what they talked about today to confirm the conversation with the auditors and with the attorneys to ensure that we use our unassigned fund balance appropriately and our accounting is accurate. So, is that a good opening?
I guess. So I talked to Attorney Graham Friday, actually, about if there was to be an expenditure, what would the best way to do that? And I presented what has been done previously in this SAU, and then I presented the rough outline of what the audit committee had been discussing. His feeling was that you would definitely, for transparency and for tracking, is open up a revenue line similar to the indirect cost revenue line, call it something like fund balance transfer, put the money in there, the revenue, because it's coming out of your fund balance, and then reduce your district appropriations by the percentage, the appropriate percentage. With the Tyler purchase, if the board decides to go ahead with that, some of those, so I talked with him about that. He said, I don't know if we need to do a conference call with the auditor, because it sounds like the auditor would support that idea anyway. So Mr. Campo and I met today and talked about mechanics. Mr. Sullivan joined us.
Mr. Campo is the auditor?
Yep.
Thank you.
So his feeling is you open up a revenue line called fund balance transfer. Put the cost of the one-time fees in there, and then that would reduce because we use like an offset model instead of a profit model, that would offset your allocations by district by that percentage.
$68,458.
Right,
is
so,
the amount
I mean,
that
I have
we
those
have
numbers for later if you need them. As far as Tyler, one of the things that Tyler will want is some payment this year. He said that's not really a problem. What you would do is just expense it to this year and then journal it over to next year with the auditor's knowledge, because it's all the same bank account. So that was the gist of our conversation Friday and today.
And I think they made it very clear that you had to have whatever you wanted to add with this new software, every aspect of it had to be budgeted for. It had to appear in the budget so everyone can see it's part of the budget. And then if you wanted to offset it
Right.
with
Right.
the revenue from the fund balance,
Yeah.
which is, and was that something that he said that we'd also have to have, talk to the DRA about, or that was using, that was
Mr.
overspending?
Campo, there were a couple of scenarios. One would be taking it out of this budget that we're currently talking about for next year. The other would be, there had been a suggestion that perhaps we take it out of our current period ending June 30th, 2019. And he said he thought that perhaps you'd have to talk to the DRA about that. And his other thought was just uniformly kind of deciding to overspend your budget is not best practice. That was his statement on it. Did you hear anything different from that?
No, actually, what he said to me is about the same. The DRA question had to do with overspending this year's, right?
Right.
He didn't see the need to do that. He also felt like, given that I engaged the attorney, and there will be an accompanying letter with that from that attorney, that not only is he covered, the board covered, and I'm covered. Well, not only am I and the board covered, he's also covered. So he thought, everybody thought, that the option of creating a revenue line for a fund balance expenditure was the best practice to do. Not to say that what happened in the past was wrong or incorrect. I just haven't had time to trace the history for that in 2 days to see. I mean, I know it happened when I was here early on with technology purchases, but...
Yeah, I think that was different. So, I mean, we need to think about this, and the audit committee is obviously working on a policy, but you've got some very good members on that audit committee that have a lot of experience, and they basically we had a very good conversation with Mr. Campo, and so I think that it's a good thing to have these things discussed and a process laid out that's appropriate.
Was there also discussion about where that balance should remain? Have you gotten to that point?
We are beginning those discussions, and the auditor indicated that he feels you should go back 5-6 years, look at your budgets, and look to see where those fund balances are coming from.
Yeah.
And then, because you have a fiduciary responsibility, determine why those lines are generating those and budget accordingly going forward. His feeling was that an SAU is a different entity from a school district which has buildings, students coming in that may have, needs, parking lots, all the physical infrastructure that you have that could have a problem. So some of the numbers around what you would hold for balances, not that school districts can do exactly what the SAU does, but with that other 2.2% fund that we have, he thought that an SAU, his quote was, it's just not that kind of animal to run those kinds of
surprised that we
balances.
accumulated that much money. He said he doesn't understand why. How could we?
Well, one thing,
Because
yeah.
We must have been over budgeting.
So we're going to have very robust conversations. We're meeting again on Friday. One thing that did happen was that the health trust numbers, 111,000 1 year, did come in. So we need to go and look at that and see how much of that was already returned. I think part of the 111 was already returned to the district. So we need to determine what's driving the unassigned fund balance, what lines, and it would behoove the board to really look at those monthly financials and understand where are we driving these, and so how does that inform our budgeting practice? So that's kind of where we're at.
And
We're
there would be
meeting
no
again
concern
Friday.
in using that as revenue because we have more than we need at this point.
Yes.
That was
Well, I
the-
think-
my-
I mean, in our conversation today, Mike said, there's some districts that actually accumulate a fund balance for a purchase such as this. Like they strategize it. Yeah. And I see a couple different pieces, and some members, I mean, Sue knows this because I told her, is that I think we've done a lot of work with cash flow, and I think there's more work to be done. I sat down with Bob today and asked for some procedures around billings. I think you're always going to maintain, I think your revenues for your IDEA grant, your reimbursements have just started to come in now. I don't think there's any way for us to control that timeline with the state. However, what I do see, and I'll be honest with you, and I think Bob sees the same thing, is that previous practice might have not had somebody build out, like let's take the SAU speech path that services Northwood. That might not be built out until right about now or later. So what I've asked Mr. O'Sullivan to do is to prepare a procedure for the business office going forward that has us encumbering that money in, I said August, because I wanted to give him a month to get things set up. He said he could do it in July. I'm sticking with August. And then do a monthly bill to the district, because that's like let's say that's $7,000 a month. When you're carrying that for 6 months, that's $42,000. If you're carrying $7,000 and then billing the next month and getting it back, then you're only carrying $7,000.
Right.
So there's a number of efficiencies that we've identified internally that we'll bring to the audit committee.
To tighten up your billing, and a lot of that Mr.
Let me
Campbell has
just add
recommended.
to what Scott's saying, there's two ways you do accounting, or two major ways, accrual and cash-based accounting. Your budget is largely an accrual. An encumbrance is an accrual recognizing an expense that is coming. And we have not been doing accrual accounting for some of the employees that get allocated out to the districts that are carried on the payroll here. So the proposal that Mr. Runing is making is actually consistent with how the vast majority of the accounting is done, and we really shouldn't have two different types of accounting within the same budget. So,
Mr. Lippert.
I was just wondering if I can get a ballpark figure of what our potential maximum outlay is for all the grants. Like how much money comes in?
I have it. If you go to the DOE website, you can see it. I think it's what, 462,000
for the IDEA grant.
For IDEA.
It's right around 454, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Thanks.
can
No,
see,
that's
and you can
That's
see your
just IDEA.
preschool. Yeah.
Right, that's one of the, what, three?
No. So here's the thing. So they changed the way you do grants. So actually, right now you have 2 IDEA grants open. About 2 months ago, you had 3 open. Then you've got right now you have 2 times 3, 6 Title IIs open because each district has 2 years worth. REAP is the same. Title I is 1. So you're running a fair amount of grants through the SAU in your local districts.
Yeah, just trying to get an idea of what kind of cash flow
We've
we
had,
needed. What kind of reserve.
Well,
we
just in
need
the
services.
IDA, you're looking at 450.
right. So but
I know it's all timing.
yeah, I
based,
mean,
but
yeah, everything's timing. Your audit committee has Melanson and Heath did an agreed upon procedure on it, so we've got those cash flows, got all kinds of numbers. We've conferred with
We have every grant.
2
every
auditing
breakdown.
firms, so I
Yeah.
think it'll be and we'll provide all of that information.
Yep. All right, thanks.
And I think once we come out of the public hearing, get back to our regular meeting, we can make an audit committee report to you on just other than just revenue.
So
items.
all that being said about revenue, if you elected to do that, that would change your appropriations from your district. So Northwood would become, I'm just going to give ballparks right now, about 362,000. Nottingham would become about 484,000, and Stratford would become about 377,000.
If we added the 68. 68.
The 68,402.
Thank you.
And just to also be clear, that money is money that has already been paid for by the districts, that's been sitting in the general fund balance. So we sort of have money that really was going to go back to the districts, and instead of just going back in the sense of tax relief, we're using it to purchase the software. correct?
We haven't made a decision.
Well, if we make
Well,
that
if you
decision.
make that decision,
Right.
yeah, that's one way to look at it, but if you make the decision to purchase it out of the proposed budget, you're gonna have the same burden on the taxpayers. And if you choose not to do anything, then you don't have any burden. I think that,
Right. Okay, so at least we feel that we've looked at this and had some good conversations about the appropriate manner in which to approach it. So that is our SAU 44 revenue section. Do we have any questions from the community on the SAU 44 revenue section that's been budgeted? And also the ensuing conversation around potential use of unassigned fund balance.
So, just so I'm clear, unassigned fund balance and surplus
I think.
are interchangeable terms. Okay.
Well, I guess you could say a surplus is what's left over at the end of one period, and then it accumulates, and so, and an
Right,
SAU
but
can accumulate a
It's
fund balance
extra money that
Yes.
has,
in excess of your
accumulated.
expenses.
From
Yes.
surpluses over the last 6 years or 7
Yep.
years.
I'm good for now.
So the next section is your superintendent's salary. And we had a hard time, I know there was conversation about, well, actually, wait, let's skip that until the next section. And I'll bring it back up. So in the note, it talks about the overspend from last year and why. And then it puts an increase on your current superintendent who's sitting here talking about himself, feeling a little uncomfortable. But, so that section, last year's budget was 130,000, or this current year's budget was 130,000. Next year's budget is potentially 127,720 for a decrease of 2,280, or 1.75%.
But that would be providing a 3% increase.
Right, that's why I said potentially.
Right, and that's because we had a change in
Yeah. Employees.
employees, and the 2 years prior number, which is 164, 155, includes end of employment payments of accruals.
Correct. Any questions about that section? Okay, thank you for not contributing to my uncomfortableness. The next is support staff salary. I know we had a conversation, we couldn't find it in the minutes, and we couldn't find it in our notes, and we racked our heads about the up to 3%.
So I had written
Right.
down the point of it, I guess, in my notes, but not the actual language. I was wondering, did you have it written?
Nobody had language, so I crafted some language today that it's a difficult thing to convey what you wanted. I know what you wanted, which is somebody could get more than 3%, somebody could get less. So I crafted language instead of up to. For instance, the salary superintendent secretary would say, this line represents the 3% budgeted average of SAU 44 salary increases. So it doesn't say you're up or you're down, it just says it's the average. It's awkward language, but I seek out people who have.
So if you guys don't mind, I
Go
can
for
get
it.
it by the end of the meeting. I just can't
Right.
do it.
That would be
Right.
great.
So once we
Yeah.
come out of the,
If you can shoot me some proposed language. But,
I know the word potential was in there, but I'll come up with it.
it just needs to show that it could be up, it could be higher, or it could be lower than 3%.
but overall, I think overall
Well, that's
was in
why I
there.
said the
Yeah,
average.
Overall, it's not going to be,
Not to exceed.
it's not going to exceed 3% overall.
Well, that's not true. It's not not to exceed number, because it could.
No,
Jim
overall.
Ticker
She's saying
But if you
overall.
leave it totally open-ended like that, then it makes it sound like the 3% has no meaning whatsoever. So there does need to be some sort of budgeted amount.
It's not an easy thing to
Yeah, I
capture.
mean, I would argue just technically, there's no, we could go beyond 3% overall as well.
Yes, a board can exceed a
board
line
can,
if they
right.
wish.
Right. So I don't know if
But
that's.
you can't spend more than you agree to
You
in
can't
the total
overall,
budget.
right.
So we
Being
would
pedantic,
have,
sorry, I'm just being pedantic, so
Yes.
ignore me.
No, but I think the language really is important, so
I agree.
I'm not gonna ignore that. I do think the language is important. I'm really gonna.
Mr. Ruth?
it comes back to a point I made that I believe we should have a little box, a line, that here's $10,000. It will be up to the SAU board to distribute pay raises according to,
But not to exceed what's in that box.
not, right now, if it's not to exceed 3%, and then somebody said, well, we have to go through every one of these lines and get every 3%, now deduct that out and come out with what's the total we're gonna come up with. We have no idea what that 3% represents right now. Not to me, anyway.
I mean, I like the simplicity of what you say, Dave. I will throw out a reality that we have to face, and that is we still have to report line by line to the DOE 25 report, and what we're trying to do is as much automation as possible, draw from this report and pump the data right into that DOE 25 with the idea of the simplicity. It is simple to understand. It's a nightmare to then for us to try to break that all apart and reallocate it back to the lines, because that's what the state actually wants us to report. So,
Yeah, I know government's, to me, government accounting is different than
anyway,
business.
All right.
welcome to my reality.
So we got
Okay, so
people working on the
continuing
notes,
with
all
our-
right.
With our hearing and to divulge our expenses and revenues.
Yep. So your salary superintendent's secretary, even with the 3% marker, brings to 2.45 because you had a change of employees last year. Same with salary receptionist, secretary, webmaster. Mentor coordination stipends aren't going up. The tech coordinator, there's an increase, a potential increase. Your salary, we put in the line, the grant coordinator, we put in the line for a potential increase, but if you can see, the actuals didn't require any increase in that line.
I thought that our superintendent secretary was still the webmaster. She's not?
She has those duties, but your line just shows, your line is your old position, your, hasn't been.
Should we change that note or that line to be what the title actually is? Isn't she an administrative assistant?
Yes.
I can take care of
I'm
it.
happy to do that,
Thank you.
and I'm also happy to,
You're talking about change from salary superintendent's secretary
Yeah.
We changed the
There's-
title when we hired the new person. We changed
Yeah.
it
There's
to
probably
administrative
administrative
assistant.
assistant.
and then we'll take the webmaster off the receptionist. All right. Any more questions on page 1? Page 2, assistant superintendent, or, well, we'll change that to student services director. Your previous person in that position had a salary of $103,968. Your new employee is a salary of $89,610 in the proposed budget, which is the current salary plus a potential 3%. Your salary, special ed director assistant, is the one that's 50% in the preschool and 50% in here. Yeah.
I know that there was some question about the title of that one line, Assistant Superintendent, Student Service Director. And I know we wanted to have it for historical reasons, but I'm
Okay.
wondering if we just have Student Service Director and have the note about Assistant Superintendent, the actuals represent the Assistant Superintendent's salary from 2016 to 2018.
Okay.
And, and remove the
I think
Assistant
that-
Superintendent.
Yeah, I'm going to remove the assistant superintendent, and so you want the note below.
Should reflect that
It says
the
that-
2000
prior actuals.
right, the 2-year prior actuals represent the assistant superintendent salary.
Okay. Do you have that
I would
thought?
put the years.
There's a change of role.
I've got it.
All right. Salary special ed secretary, should we change that to salary special ed administrative assistant?
I think we did.
Sure, keep it consistent.
Which line are you on?
That one.
2330511102.
And what do you want to make it?
Just take wherever it says secretary, substitute admin assistant, except for like school board secretary. I don't think there's a change.
So to go back to the 2330511102, that's the assistant special education director, is it not?
No, 02 is the former special education secretary.
And she's split 50-50, the
Wait a minute,
secretary?
give me the line number again.
You said it right.
You're right.
2330511102
Okay, yeah, that's
is
the line up
entitled
above.
Salary Special Ed Director Assistant. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering,
Should be
shouldn't be
assistant
Assistant
special ed
director of
director.
special ed.
Assistant.
Yes, Mr. Green?
I believe we changed your title last year.
Assistant student services.
Oh, so Assistant Student Services
Assistant
Director.
Yeah.
So that's what that should be. So the board concurs that
Assistant special ed.
No, I've got it.
Student Services.
Don't even worry about it.
And that is now due to a slight change in the role, 50% here and 50% in the preschool budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Salary professional business manager. As in previous years, we have somebody that isn't fully certified. We give a.
I'm not far away.
We put in the current salary 83,500 with the $4,000 completing certification. That was already in there in the previous year, so your increase is from 87,550 to 90,125, and that represents a potential of a 3% increase. Salary finance manager, the other 15% is in the preschool. And so you're looking at a previous salary of $43,519 in this portion to $44,824. Salaries for bookkeepers in this budget is 2 full-time and 1 part-time. And actually, we've just changed that, but I don't think it's going to change your bottom line.
I just have a question about the title. That's like 1920s, 1930s title bookkeeper. Do we have anything a little more modern, like financial department?
Like what?
Or,
Accounting technician?
Accounting technician. Okay, I just bring it.
I don't know.
We're changing a lot of titles.
They're,
so
they're
I
not
thought-
intended to be accountants, correct?
Right,
I'm not accountants.
right.
I think they're still called
They're accounts payable or accounts receivable. Okay, forget it. I just
All right.
trying to lighten up the.
Okay, so that line, getting back to our hearing, if we're all set to go here, 2520-51105 salary on bookkeepers is budgeted currently at 112,157, and the new amount is 115,396.58 for a 2.89% increase, and that represents 2 full-time and 1 part-time.
Right. Salary / assistant to the BA. That's the conversation that we had about the current person and the roles expanding, and so that increase is included in the notes. And then the board last year or this year approved returning the longevity payments back to the employees, so that's why you see longevity payments in there. So, your 18-19 budget was 611,197, and your 19-20 budget is 580,504.29 for a decrease of 30,692.71.
Did any board members have any questions or comments in regard to the staff salaries?
Yes. One, I mean, we do know that the decrease is also because we took that change of the one person who is now a preschool,
Half and half.
half in the preschool and half in here. So we took half of her salary out. What was half of her salary?
Approximately 39,655.
No, I wanted to see what line was it?
Proposed or
39.
actual?
Okay, so the actual, so $39,000. Okay. So we're not just decrease. What's the difference then? Is the $10,000 increase for that person, and then it's your salary change from.
The assistant, there's a change in the superintendent line for change of personnel. There's a change in the student services director. There's a change in the assistant student services director in the manner that it's billed, and a change of personnel. There's a proposed change to the human resource individual. Those are the changes, right?
Mhm.
Do we have any questions on salary from the community?
In regards to those positions being split 50-50, is that all the same amount of money being shuffled around, or are there new positions in there?
There was a reduction.
So, okay, so it's actually gone down and just been,
Well,
or the
Yeah.
money has gone down and
right.
the responsibilities have changed?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I'm
then
good.
yeah. And then there's a 3-day week IDA funded, not IDA funded, a 3-day week position for an LEA that brought the cost down. So,
Everyone's good to move on? Okay.
I'm still questioning I guess we'll discuss it more, the $10,000 increase for the HR person.
So when we deliberate, when we come back into our meeting, we'll deliberate on these lines. People should be making notes about things they'd like to discuss or amend, and motions can be made.
on to the benefits section. You had some plan changes because of employment, so it says a 1.8% increase, but it also says an 8.7 adjustment on the GMR. So just understand that those two factors figure into that equation. Your dental insurance is down a bit, although your rates are the same. Working comp is in there, plus you have a maximum cap. We won't have that cap until right around when your health insurance rates come in, so we get the budget for the 10% increase. So long-term disability, on to page 3. These are your FICA for your different positions, and the accompanying notes. Again, one of the issues that we discovered, and I think I gave you guidance on that last time about the New Hampshire retirement system and what's a teacher and what's support. So we continue to make those adjustments in your budgets to align us with what the rules are. Are there any questions on page 3? On to page 4. Again, FICA for the assistants, the BA, longevity bookkeepers, the finance manager, the manager bookkeepers, and longevity FICA. So, last year's total was $348,520. This year's total is $352,871 for an increase of $4,351 or 1.25%.
Support, have any questions on that before we move forward? Okay.
The next are your conferences and courses line, and we made some adjustments on actuals and requests based on that. So your proposed budget for this year was $10,000. Your proposed budget for next year is $7,000 for a reduction of $3,000 or 30%. Any questions about that section?
Whenever, I think we have something.
Language?
Yes.
Okay.
This represents a budgeted salary increase of potentially 3%.
Perfect. Well, I don't know. What is the rest of the board
I'll hit send. I have it in
You
an
send
email
it to
to
me?
you.
Great.
All right.
I don't want to send emails during a hearing.
Okay.
All right. So what was the language
I don't
again?
know how else to record
We'll
it.
just,
so.
well, I think we can just say it and the board can,
Yes.
when we get into
That
our
before.
deliberation part, but I don't think that we should be electronically
You
communicating.
know what? You're right. I'll just send it at the end. I'll hit
After
you.
we've,
No,
We can just say it.
You just say it and have the secretary can record it. And,
Okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay, that's good.
This represents a budgeted salary increase of potentially 3%. Which means that it could be 0% or it could be 3.4%. And I know that that does not get us to the pool issue, but I have a lot of words on this paper, and there are a lot of notes. I can say something like increases are wholly dependent on evaluations, pool, management, but I'm not thinking that you want me to do that.
It's okay.
You could just say a potentially 3% subject to review, or something like that, or
Subject to
evaluation.
review would
Yes.
be good to go in there too.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
So I'm gonna add that in there.
Don't send.
I will not send. But I didn't have a computer, so this is how I wrote it.
Got it.
Okay, are we ready for the joint school board section?
Yep.
Again, those are pretty much budgeted off your actuals and pretty straightforward. Same amount as last year, $14,938.60.
And that's just the school board secretary and the stipend for the treasurer.
Yep,
And then our
okay.
audit fees are the biggest
Yep.
nut to crack there.
Yep.
That's fine.
Legal expenses. If you look at your actuals, felt like $4,000 was appropriate. On to page 5. Insurance, liability. Took a look at the actuals and then reduced a little bit. And based it on the 9% cap.
This is the insurance,
Liability.
the liability insurance based on 9% cap.
Yep. And then, so that, last year you had 7,900 budgeted, this year you have 7,000 budgeted for a reduction of 900 or 11%, 11.39%. I'm gonna stop saying percentages.
Before we move on to the computer piece, do we have any questions on these expenditures? Do the community members have any questions on these expenditures for the board to address? Okay. All right.
So the next section, at the last board meeting, we were asked to put the one-time infinite vision cost into the budget, so that's there with the notes. And that comes to $68,402. Any questions about that section?
I have a question. Below that, is the $35,000 in the computer software, does that connect with this? Is it all part of that?
We're gonna, when we go to the next page, we'll be able to break that out when I get to the notes on the next page.
Okay, because I just wanted to know the whole cost for,
The one-time fees for Tyler are $68,402.
right,
The yearly cost is $17,130. If you stayed with ADS, your yearly cost would be about $14,000.
A bit higher, but 14 and
does that
change.
14 and
include
change.
the hosting it? Okay, I thought that was something.
It was an idea that I did throw out there, and I think the board pretty much agreed that it was not a good direction to go, so.
Okay.
So I have to do that.
One of the things that did come up with the audit committee is this whole packet right now, because we have the money in the surplus, the 68 and the 17, if the board wanted to use some of the surplus toward that we could take all of that out of the surplus this year. Because we have so much in surplus.
Do you mind if I just give you some, I'm not arguing, just some guidance on that? So, for me, and the board can disagree, you have a one-time annual expense that's going to happen every year, whether it's ADS or whether it's Infinite Vision or ADS, right? So, the board might want to consider if they take the $17,000 in addition to the 68 out of the fund balance, that looks great for this year's budget, but the next year budget, when we go to budget that $17,000 back in, it's gonna look like an increase.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but that's up to you folks.
That is, we're talking about next year.
Right.
This is just to alleviate some of the burden, which we already have the money sitting in this fund that belongs to the taxpayers, so we could alleviate more paying for them
Totally up to the board.
by paying for this whole system this year out of the surplus. This is what one of our members, who is a CFO of a company, suggested.
So just to recap that, we've got the line 2320-56500. It's the $68,402. There was nothing on that line prior. That's for the implementation, essentially, one-time expenditures to implement the software, project management, $4,000, training, $22,400 for 224 hours, consulting, $15,000, data import, $79.50, setup fee, $2,000, and those are all the items there. Now, in addition to that, we've got all these other calling system, and that's all part of it too, the web portal and so forth.
It's the interface. Yeah.
The interface, okay. So, $87.25 for the portal, time card interface, $36.56, the substitute calling system, $15.25, and the substitute calling system time worked, $31.46. I have a question when we go back into our meeting around the front line, because we're paying for that, and is it duplicative at all? But I guess that's only substitute management. It's not any of this substitute.
Right, I can tell you that from our conversation with Tyler, it's not duplicitous, but it's the
I mean
interface.
duplicative. I don't think it's duplicitous.
Right. Sorry. So, oh boy. So in our conversation with Tyler, they can't offer that level of detail that the substitute calling system will be able to offer. So they have to design an interface. So that's the charge for the interface.
Between frontline
And
and,
Tyler.
And their software.
Yeah.
okay.
Is that correct, Bob?
It is.
Even though I used the wrong word.
So that we fully disclose this for those that may pick up and look at this on tape. It's $68,402, and we'll have another conversation when we go in to deliberate. Do we have any questions from the community on that before we move forward?
Yes, I think everybody received my email about this, and I know I stated that that it could be interpreted as being a quick decision. It was explained to me that was not the case, but it was also stated at the last meeting that this software did not perform all the functions that it was desired that it would. Mainly the job orders, timekeeping throughout different times of the day was brought up. So I'm just bringing up that if the software is not exactly what the SAU, if it's not a perfect fit, is it really the time to buy that when the other software you guys are using, it looks like it costs $3,000 less a year to run, and I understand that that's on its way out, but it's not dead yet, you know. So there would be, if you could get another 3 years out of it, that's $10,000 just in that line, in that amount, and maybe that would allow time to find a software that meets all the desired intentions, because that's a big chunk of change on a software program.
We should probably also mention while we're here that we did go out to bid on this, and we put the specifications out, and we had two parties respond, and there were some significant cost variations, and the board did review the RFP as well. Is there anything else on this? Okay, we'll move on to. I'm sorry, Dr.
Just a
Shonda.
point of order, are we going to answer him? Do we just let his question hang out there?
I think that it was more of a statement than a
Well,
question,
I guess the question part of that would be, does this software not fully meet what the SAU is desiring from a software program?
You want me to touch on that?
Sure.
It actually far exceeds what we're already doing
What you're already doing, okay?
and will provide substantial productivity gains.
Mm-hmm.
It has far more functionality than what we're presently using. And actually, the market for this type of software is becoming down almost to either a single player, whom we're proposing to use,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're in a state like Texas, they simply design their own for the whole state. So there aren't a lot of choices, and the only alternative choice was more than 2x, both on a annual maintenance fee basis,
Okay.
as well as the one-time
The
fee
initial
to buy
purchase.
software.
I
I just wanted to add one more point, and that is on the time management part of this. We already own the frontline software. It's just a matter of integrating. And what we really want, and the frontline does, is allows us to report multiple in and outs during the day, whereas the functionality that Tyler has only allows check in the morning, check out in the afternoon.
So
we can still handle that with the frontline software.
Okay, so that interface.
It's the interface to make the frontline software work with Tyler.
So what I just discussed will be
addressed.
Okay, okay. Which I don't think it was.
No, those are great questions.
I don't think it was fully known last time.
Oh no,
it was
it takes a ton of research to learn all this.
All right.
So if we look at the notes, professional development and assessment going electronically is $8,100. Absent management is $6. The Tyler annual fee is in at $17. TeamView, which is $600, that's for ADS or Tyler to be able to look at what you're doing when you're having problems. And then DocStar, which you've already paid for and budgeted for, which is our scanning software that allows us to scan things and store them electronically, and its final year is $38.52. And then there was some straightening out of the budget, moving $1,500 from another line into this line because it was more appropriate. So this keeps you from having to budget for the frontline and absent management and all that stuff in your local budgets. And it combines it here at the SAU. So, with all those adjustments, the line goes from $17,000 to $35,682 for an increase of $18,682.
But much of that increase represented as decreases in the individual district budgets.
Right. Well, or the plan not to budget for that stuff.
Right.
Right.
How much of those is it? A third of the.
$8,100.
Third of the 8,100, a third of the 6,000.
So each of our budgets is down by 4,700 in this line, corresponding line in the district's budget.
Well, I mean, you haven't budgeted for that. Remember, this is a switch to this year. You haven't technically budgeted for that in your budgets in previous years, but you would be.
Okay.
So we can call it a reduction because
It's not that.
it's not an ad yet.
All right.
But potentially there would be.
So frontline is new, would have been budgeted at the local district to the tune of 14,000 roughly, divided by 3, and now that's brought back here. So included in this $18,682 increase is that frontline piece.
Correct.
That was recently voted on by the board to provide that software. Everyone good with that?
The next is your copier lease, same amount as year before, even with your approval of a new copier. So last year was $52.65, and this year it's $52.65, and your actual was $52.64.76. So I think we budgeted for that pretty closely. Telephones, we put in $4,500 primarily because your last time was $43.33.07, just to keep make sure we have enough money for that. And then we've reduced your cell phone services by one line, because there's an employee who isn't using it. Internet services, we budgeted up. Wait a minute. So,
$50.
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we upped your budget $50 just to cover the cost of internet. One of the things that we've discovered, I know there was some talk about upgrading our internet speed. As of the last probably month and a half, we haven't had the connectivity issues that we were having before, primarily because I think Mr. Stanley and the Atlantic Broadband guy found that there was a problem. He didn't find, but the Atlantic Broadband technician found that there was a problem in the junction box down on Lucas Farm Road. Pond Road, thank you. And it seems like that's been addressed. Our speeds seem to be adequate.
They're fine.
Yep. Postage meter refill. Your actuals are indicative of what your budget is projected to be. $4,000. Advertising. We looked at the actuals and reduced that a couple $100. Which brings that cost center, 18-19 was 500, now it's 300 with an increase of 200. Staff development printing, that's for the SAU day, whether I need to print documents for that. We'll keep it at 200. And the next are your mildly adjusted travel lines for mileage. They're up $100. Travel office staff has to do with people traveling from school to school, underneath that. And they've increased that by $100 based on the fact that you went over by $100, but then before that you weren't, so they averaged it out. Office supplies, your accounts receivable person did advocate to have an increase in that based on going over from the year before and the increased cost of some forms. Computer software, there is a new budget item for some antivirus for the Apple computers and also Adobe Acrobat Professional. When we go to convert a PDF or we don't have that capability, actually one of us goes home and does it from our home computer to convert.
So there could be some, depending upon what you're converting, you could be having some sensitive, potentially information you're bringing home.
Also, Professional gives the ability to electronically sign, where the free version
and make edits.
And make edits. So we put that in there.
Do we have questions on that? I see. Everyone's good?
Is that 10 seats here or
10
between
seats.
the buildings
10 seats here.
in this building?
Mm-hmm.
Does everybody in the building need the ability to?
I would say that. Well, you.
Well, we can do it when we deliberate. We can have that
Yeah, I
conversation.
mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would say 10 is 4. There's 4 people that don't need the capability. All right. That brings us to periodicals, admin periodicals business, which is the transfer. Well, so the reason it's down to reflect the transfer of the online application, which is Nachemia, back to the computer maintenance agreement, the $1,500. That's why you see that number different. Trash removal is a misnomer. It's not really trash removal. It's shredding and document disposal.
Want to change that? Trash to shredding?
It's up to the board.
Why don't you just put document disposal?
Next section is your custodial services, which is the contract we pay for somebody to come in on Sundays and clean. That's $5,200. It remains the same. Rental of facility, your increase is based on the formula outlined in your lease. Mr. O'Sullivan has calculated that, so you've gone from $48,007 to $48,900, an increase of $893. Security and fire alarm, you were budgeted at $1,900. We looked at your previous actuals and reduced that to $1,800. Replacement of computers, we reduced that to replace one computer a year. Feeling like that would be adequate, so that went from $5,000 to $1,200. Replacement of furniture, we didn't put anything in the budget because we did some purchases approved by the board. There's no need for any furniture for this next year.
Should you leave that at $1?
We can.
In the next meeting we'll do it.
No, tonight's the night.
Tonight's the night, Dave.
Yeah, I'm having one more meeting
Want
after.
me to put $1 in? I'll put $1 in.
No, why don't we wait and do
Right.
all the changes at once? Membership fees, superintendent, we reduced that based on what the actuals would be. Professional associations is your season ticket. That's up that's up to $19.50 this year. Your membership dues and fees for special education professionals, we sat down and looked at the actuals and what the projections were and reduced that to $1,920. And then professional association business manager is the New Hampshire ASBO membership. So last year in that section you had $7,000 budgeted. This year you have $55,970 budgeted for a reduction of $1,030. Electric service is a number based on looking at $6,664.50, and increasing that to $6,800, which brings the electrical service from $6,200 to $6,800 for a $600 increase. Moving expenses is $1 to keep the line open. And then the next section, does anybody have any questions about those sections?
I do.
Yeah.
Why do they go down, membership dues and fees and special education?
Because it has to do with, one of the calculations in there has to do with the percentage of your annual salary.
Okay.
So the guy in the previous position had a higher salary than the person in the position now.
And the difference is $980?
And then there was a look at, what exactly we needed and what the costs were for memberships. And
But
so
we're not dropping off any,
We're not dropping any memberships.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
No, we did. We dropped some off.
Which one? CEC.
Yeah.
But we dropped like a $50 membership. That's it.
Well,
Don't really use it too much. We don't necessarily sign up for the conference that membership offers you discounts on.
okay, thank you.
And then the last section is superintendent's office refreshment, level funded. Background checks, level funded. $1 for miscellaneous expenses. And then bank fees, we left budget at $100, but if you can see your 2 years actual, you didn't have any last year, and you had $13 the year before. So, the total expenses go from $1,256,074 to $1,309,443 for an increase of $52,930. However, if you make any adjustments to the revenue line, that's really going to affect your net out.
So before we close the public hearing, do we have any community questions on the expenditures that we just discussed? Yes.
Tanya Rich Stratford. I just have a question about that bad debt number, 18,909.
Oh, you and the auditors both.
That was a write-off, I'll let Mr. O'Sullivan, but it was a one-time adjustment write-off essentially of bad debts.
What was that debt for?
It wasn't the debt.
It was the,
unbilled. It was
unbilled,
uncollected monies from
Grants.
ancient grants that predate probably most of the people sitting here. And eventually, the decision was made to group multiple years and take one fell swoop and just get rid of them.
That was at the recommendation of our former auditor, I believe, as well, right?
Yeah.
To clean that up.
Right.
It had just been a
So
clean-
somewhere in the mid-2000s, 2005 to somewhere around there, there was some debts that, there was some grants that money wasn't collected on, which is not what we like to do.
And then I also noticed an increase in benefits a little bit while back on health insurance.
Yep,
It's
that's
like a
the,
3%.
well, that's a combination of changes in employments and plans, which brought the cost down, right? But then, once we get that cost, we put what's called the GMR on it, which is a guaranteed maximum rate. So our health insurance provider has told us your rates could rise as much as 8.7% this year. We don't get those actually increases until the spring, so we budget for the GMR, the guaranteed maximum rate. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the guaranteed maximum rate. We've had some pretty vast swings. I'm sure there's people who can help me. We've had years. Mrs. Henriksen, can you help me with this?
I'm sorry.
He's talking
Talking about health
GMR.
insurance. So this year it's a GMR of 8.7. Last year it was a GMR somewhere around 3 or 4, and then it ended up being negative, right? And then the year before it was projected at about the same, and it ended up being negative even more. Is that correct? So we don't know until they set the rates. So they
Just
do.
a safe,
Yes.
safe to budget as
Right.
much as
And the GMR is set by they call us and say, here's your GMR.
So that's the maximum they could charge us, and usually they, shouldn't say usually, but many times they don't. And so you could have that line, be beneficial, if you will, as we go forward. Does anyone have any additional questions on the proposed budgets for preschool or the SAU? Does everyone feel as though we covered the material that we need to cover by law for a budget hearing? Are there any questions or any concerns about what we covered and divulged? Everyone good?
Do you need a motion to come out of public hearing or close public hearing?
We would. I think we should probably just at the very end just recap the proposed budget and increase. I will, yep. For both the preschool and the SAU before we close. We've covered revenues, we've covered expenditures, we've had some discussion. We've discussed the potential unassigned fund balance as it relates to revenue. Mrs. Hendrickson?
When we talked about the unassigned fund balance, what is the total right now that we have in the unassigned fund balance? So people understand that if we were to take out, when we talked about funding the new software, whether it was 68,000 or the 80,000, whatever, if we did the one-time the yearly fee with that,
Looks like 644,883.
It's the fours.
No.
it should be 473, and we
I'm
need to.
missing something now. I'm just looking at the wrong line.
Yep. So at a prior meeting, we were given the balance sheet. It includes the unassigned fund balance number. That does not include, we are still not audited for the period ending June 30th, 2018. So if there's any balances there, it will change.
A little over 400 is my
I
recollection.
thought it was 462 listed
It was
here.
473, but then I don't know if it
Well, you
was
had to-
473 for a long time. Then we
Right.
took out some of the money, I think, to pay off the former superintendent, the $35,000 that we,
I don't think that would be in there yet because that would be part of the closing of the books
Yeah.
in June.
okay.
Yeah,
right.
the
It
number-
was 473. I don't know what,
Well,
what did we take money out?
I seem to remember doing some quick math because it isn't audited yet. And I think you're at 423 after that.
That's
That
my
35,000 or
Overspend.
so.
Yeah.
$35,000 came out, yes.
And that's not 432.
It's got 462 if you look down here, right?
Right, that includes, so hold on for a second. Is there another page to this? There should be. No. So 432 is your unassigned fund balance. And then that's your preschool.
Okay, so for the purposes of the hearing, we have a balance sheet as of October 31st here. And listed here, it indicates unreserved fund balance 432,727.09. And then it lists unreserved fund balance, which we believe is the
725.
preschool.
That's it.
Yep. line 25,000,030,770 of 19,617.88. This does not include our period ending June 30th, 2018. That is still not audited. They're in this week. And so therefore, the overspend that would have been occurred in our budget that closed at that period due to the payments that were made, employee payments, that's not included. So it's going to be lower. Are there any other questions on that? All right.
That does include the $35,000 taken out.
It does not.
Yeah, I don't know, because that's an ADS report.
Well, it
That's
might,
not-
it might,
It does.
It does,
Because
Okay.
once 473,
Yeah.
money
All right.
doesn't disappear.
right, because it has your,
so this is the adjusted balance, if you will, that
Right.
rolled forward in, but
That's
we
what-
don't have final audited numbers.
correct.
Put it in equal.
Okay.
And that makes sense, because
Okay.
if you look at your 25 account, which is your preschool account, that, you reduced that, remember?
Yes.
And now you're sitting at 19, so that's last year's.
Right.
So I'm
All right.
gonna make the assumption that,
You what? Otherwise, $35,000 disappears.
yeah,
Okay, so we're just going to quickly recap. Our SAU 44 proposed budget is $1,309,004.43, which is a $52,930.43 increase, or 4.21% increase. Our preschool budget is, final piece of it here, is proposed budget of $480,415.78, or a $9,261.52 increase, which is a 1.97% increase, and we also need to factor in net of the revenues of 4767, right, on that? So, actually, I think that's on the other budget as well. And we've also discussed our revenues on both. We've discussed the apportionments for each town. So do we have any final questions or any final thoughts on anything we should add to this hearing? Okay, any final questions? Okay, so
Motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Second.
okay, we got a motion to adjourn at 8:12. All those in favor? Okay, so that's a unanimous vote in favor. So we are now out of our public hearing. We are re-entering our regularly scheduled meeting that was recessed to accommodate our public hearing. And we can now move on with our agenda, and we will do our deliberations in regard to our budget. And with an idea that we will vote tonight to finalize budgets and then move those amounts forward to the local budgets.
do you wanna do that now when everything's fresh in these minds?
So with the board's approval, we can just move that deliberation up and do it right now while everyone's has this, you know, top of mind. So would you like to begin with the SAU budget or the preschool budget?
Your choice. Preschool.
Preschool, there we go. Okay. So we'd be looking for discussion here, amendments to lines by motion,
Well,
or,
let me make a motion to accept it and then have a
Okay.
discussion.
yep,
I'll make a motion to accept the SAU 44 preschool budget with, do you want me to list the totals? The total,
Page 38.
sorry. Oh, I'm totally on that one. If anyone else has it, they can make a motion.
480, 415.78.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
So that motion be with the suggested wording, change on the notes for the salary increase?
With the suggesting wording change for the salary increase on notes. Yes.
Is that on the preschool though? I don't know.
No, I think it was supposed to be for
Yeah.
both, so yes, thank you.
Second
Do you want me
by
to
Brian.
clean up my motion?
It's a little dirty.
Okay, I will make a motion that we accept the proposed 2020 preschool budget at a total of $480,415.78, with the change to the notes regarding the 3% salary increases.
And I'll still second.
Okay. All right, so we've got the motion, we've got the second, we have discussion on this matter.
I am still concerned about the large increase for the third year in a row, finding out now that the per teacher increase, one teacher is going to be having over a $4,400 increase this year, another a $4,500 increase. Even in the past 2 years, we did 1 year with a $3,000 increase plus the 3%, and another year with the $2,000 increase plus 3%. I think this is an incredibly large increase in 1 year.
Did you pass something around, or did you not?
I did. I gave everyone,
I don't
you
know.
probably already had a chance to look at it. One, the minutes from September 2016. It shows the increase first. On page 5, it shows the increase was 3%, plus one teacher received $3,000, another teacher we gave a $3,500 increase. That was our first year we did this, in 2016.
Can I just,
Sure.
in there, further on it goes on to say that this wouldn't give both individuals a flat increase, and I think we agreed earlier that we're going to change the approach from just a flat increase based on their salary to looking at the average of the districts and trying to target for that. So we're changing the approach this year. At least that's what's proposed based on what's been done in the past to make up for what wasn't done like 10 or 12 years ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Also, the increases were less because we weren't, the motion that was made to give them a smaller increase than what was proposed. So if we had been giving them what was proposed in years 1 and 2, then this year's increase would probably be less, or it would have taken fewer years to get them caught up. But the motion that was made was not to take the total amount that was proposed. So we gave them a smaller increase than what was proposed.
We have here what was proposed on October 23rd, 2017. This came directly from Dr. Godomsky. Teacher 1, 3% plus $2,000. Teacher 2, 3% plus $2,000. So we approved everything that was given to us, that was proposed to us. I think that this increase is incredibly large. I understand that their job is very important, but I also look at the market for preschool teachers. And the market for preschool teachers, I mean, working in a public school preschool, the salary is so much better than in the private sector, but there aren't that many public school preschools. So, I mean, there are a lot of teachers that are making, preschool teachers that have early education degrees, they're making like $15 an hour. So the market isn't great for that.
Our preschool teachers are dual certified, and they're working with a much more difficult caseload than like where I send my son to the private preschool in Deerfield. They're not handling special ed cases there. They're not going to special ed trainings there. They're not certified. They're not even. I don't know the full extent of their certifications, but I don't believe they're dual certified as an early education and a special ed. And I think we have to honor that and respect these people with their certifications and their responsibilities for what they're actually should be doing.
I think we have, and I think their salary right now, giving them a 3% increase without doing the additional $4,000 increase to each teacher would be honoring that. I mean, they're making a decent salary.
I disagree, but that's fine.
But they're not in the union. They're not paying union dues. They're not, I mean, it's not our choice that they're not in the union.
Right, but it's right to work, right?
Yeah.
So.
I also would like to say that I disagree. I understand that it's a large increase, but I think it's a large increase because of the number of years that they've been underpaid.
And
So
we
I
didn't
think
do
it's
anything
so I think
retroactive.
it's large but appropriate.
I think historically they've received raises.
I'm not saying they haven't received raises. I'm saying historically they haven't been paid.
Well, I think that as soon
compared
as,
to
that when Dr. Godomsky was the first time the board heard that there was some discrepancy, if you will, they made some changes. So
yes.
I don't think there's been a notion that they've been
I think that the reason it was brought up to begin with was because at the time they were being underpaid.
They weren't getting paid maybe as much as those that had CBAs.
They weren't being paid the
Correct.
market rate.
I don't know. I don't know. But I know they had increases all along. But do we have any other conversation?
I really think that we owe them our respect for taking on a very difficult job. And it's very important that we educate our youngest. And I am in 100% agreement of these raises.
Mr. Patrick, you had,
Yes, I'd like to reduce that line to $3,836.46 from the $8,603.46 to reflect a 0% increase in the preschool budget that would come back as a burden on our town. I do agree with exactly what you said. It is a hard, difficult job. Their student contact time is 20% less than the teachers in our district. They have student contact time 4 days a week and 1 day to meet and deliberate about students. And I believe that we could pay them once again in halves to bring up to the full rate that you were discussing, that we should have a higher rate for them. But that higher rate is only based on what our district levels are. And our district levels are based on what we negotiated with with the CBA with our regular teachers. So I don't think we have to bring them up that fast.
Can someone
can
clarify
we
that?
just clarify that?
I don't.
1 second, please. Let's have a full
It's
opportunity
20,
for,
maybe it's
can we just get your
maybe it's not
numbers?
20%. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
what's your
16%.
number again in the line? I just want to get to the line that you're addressing.
Right, I want to adjust it from the 8,000.
Which line are we on so we can all look at
We
it?
are on 1200.
Teacher salary, preschool.
Salary teacher.
51110-01.
Under preschool revenue.
On page 33.
Okay, so you're looking at the $8,603.46 increase there.
Right.
Okay,
To bring it down to $3,836.46, which would be deducting the $4,767 in revenues from the back page. Hopefully bring it down to almost a 0%.
Sorry, did you make a motion?
No,
we got a motion on the
Discussing it
table.
because you have a motion on the table. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion.
Well, we can make a motion to amend it then, right?
Right, the motion.
Okay, so you've got a motion to amend line 120051110-01
Yes.
to an increase of $3,836.46
That's correct.
instead of the $8,603.46.
Which would still give the people a decent increase for next year. And not take the bite all at one time, do a 9% increase.
Just like to reiterate that we're not taking the bite all at one time and that.
Point of
this is-
order, did
Okay,
anybody
right.
second his
We
motion?
need to give an opportunity for a second.
Okay,
There's
in
a second.
discussion.
Okay, so for the record here, we've got Mr. Patrick making an amendment, Ms. Hendrickson seconding that amendment, and you have the dollar values that are proposed. It's line 1200-51110.
80 years old.
I let Mr. Rooney. Okay, so now we can have discussion on this amendment.
Can I point out just a point about their contact hours? If you look at contact hours with students, they're about 16% less, I think.
Yeah, I said 20 at first, but then I thought it's 16%.
My assumption is because 50% of their caseload is special ed, that fifth day of the week, they're still under contract. They're going to special ed meetings, trying to make accommodations for students. It's back to the apples and apples. You can't compare like what a preschool special ed teacher does to like a third grade teacher. You know, they're not going to have 50% of a caseload of special ed in a third grade classroom. So they're going to need more time to do that. So I don't think contact hours with students is really a fair way to look at their job.
They also have less, they don't have a prep period during the day.
no planning or lunch.
They don't have a planning period, they don't have a lunch period, they're putting kids on the bus, taking kids on the bus.
That's a lot.
There's
a lot.
They get Fridays though, correct, for the planning, am I to understand
They
that?
do,
Yeah.
but
For the lunch.
they get Fridays
But,
for
you know,
lunch.
I mean,
But to say 20% isn't fair if every other day regular
Actually, before we
teachers.
disintegrate into a big joke, my comment was, do they have Fridays for planning? I'm simply trying to understand what they're getting for planning. I'm not trying to divide, say they don't get to eat.
We're joking.
I'm sure they eat.
Yeah.
They have,
Yes,
they have Fridays
Mm-hmm.
for planning and IEP meetings
So they are allowed some time for planning.
on Fridays.
On Friday, but the rest of the time, they're just with students.
And they
So
get
the
no break.
Without a break.
The contact time may even out, given
Okay.
that regular ed teachers get
That planning period and
During
lunch period and whatever, right? So it's
All right, so can we,
time-wise.
I'd like everyone to
I just wanna
kind of try to take a turn, be recognized, and we'll try to balance the conversation.
I wanted to just clarify what you're saying in that I think even 16% may not be accurate because regular ed students, regular ed teachers in our buildings throughout the week have planning periods as well. So it's just that our preschool planning period is all in one day. So I don't know that you can calculate, or I don't know that you have calculated what our student time is for our teachers in our buildings.
No, I
Because-
didn't do that. I'll be
Because
honest.
they do have time when they're not.
concentrated
But how
So,
many hours is your school district in session?
I don't know.
I think 6.5 is right, 7:50 to 8:10.
I don't know all the numbers, but I'm just saying that I don't think that 16% is accurate, or the 20%.
It's an hour plus and 20 minutes.
I think
Okay.
I'm valued, my opinion values as much as yours. so.
Oh, I agree. I just want to make sure that we're being accurate with the comments, that's all.
I just know that when we get to our March meetings and have to propose this to our town, zero increase in the preschool budget, even though giving people still raises is more palatable than the larger increase.
I mean, one way that we can talk about the raise is to talk about the fact that we're actually correcting for historically underpaying them. So I understand everything that we're saying here, but there's another way to look at it. Historically, we underpaid them. So, I mean, and we didn't go retroactive because we did talk about that at this table. We talked about, paying them for going.
Right.
Sorry, go on.
We've talked about this 5 or 6 times
Yes.
within this budget.
Yes.
I don't know that
And
any
first we were going to do it in 2
further
years.
discussion
and
here
then
is going
3
to
years.
contribute to
Yeah.
anything.
I think we should just call it a question.
Does this, if we don't do it, would we be in jeopardy of having this discussion again next year?
Oh,
If-
We have every discussion.
I guess
Yes.
is my point, is that we're just kicking the can down the street, we're not fixing,
And you're out.
or dissolve, putting the issue to rest.
Yeah.
Mr. McGuigan?
Honestly, I think the real solution to this is that we need to come up with a policy as to how we should be paying the preschool positions. Be it based on a formula of the district or some other thing. I think that's really what we should be doing to prevent having to have this discussion every year or every couple of years. Say, if we have a policy that says our preschool teachers are paid thusly, then that, we can discuss that policy all we want and change that if we need to, but if we come up with something, then we wouldn't have to do this every time. We would have to do a budget 5 weeks in a row, 5 months in a row, and that's what I would be in favor of doing at that point.
Sounds like a good idea.
I agree.
So the board has, though, authorized additional payments to preschool. This would be the 4th year or the 3rd?
Third
The
year.
3rd year. Okay.
Do we feel that this would, if this passed the original way, not with the amendment, would it put the issue to rest?
No, because the document that we
then
had on October 22nd said that this is only half of what was proposed. Right? So the rest of it would come
Next year.
next year.
But if we do this and then create a policy.
Right.
14 years later.
Mr. Byrne?
I have an alternative suggestion. If it's something that you're looking for a formula, you're looking to make it static, we could always look at it as we're going to match whatever the lowest paid CBA is in the district. So no matter what it is, they would be matched to the lowest. So if you look at it this way, what it would look like for this year for one employee would be $47,999, matches the lowest paid. For employee number 2, it would be $55,532. That matches the lowest paid district for their step on their CBA. Now you're comparing salaries to salaries for the lowest. I will tell you that if you do that, based on those calculations, you'll save about $500 overall for this budget. And then moving forward, you would just have to make their pay whatever the lowest paid district is moving forward. So if all of a sudden your CBAs change or one takes a huge increase or whatever, then you might see this again, but it would be a static saying this is what it's going to be. It's going to match to whatever the lowest paid districts is. So right now, if we were to do this, you would see a $500 decrease, roughly. I can give you the exact, but one was above the SAU, above that SAU pay or above that district pay by $1,044. The other was below by $406. So maybe it's a $600, about a $400 swing is what you're looking at, $400 to $600. I can give it to you exactly, but that's what you'd be looking at. That would give you your formula. It's whatever is the lowest paid step for the districts.
Lowest paid average or the lowest paid town?
Lowest paid town for the district.
On that step, whatever step.
On that step, correct.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion on this? Back, we've kind of tried to get to both sides. Any other comment? Okay, hearing. I'm sorry, Mr. Wells.
Are we going to vote on the amendment?
I was going to say now. Let's go. So we've got the amendment. Everyone understands it. It would be a reduction, and it would bring the preschool budget level funded. Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
The amendment.
Of the amended motion. Of the amendment.
Okay, all those opposed? Alrighty, so that motion fails.
The amendment.
Can we take a roll call of that? Can that be documented?
I don't think.
Video recorded.
Okay.
It's recorded on the. Alright. So, we're back to our original motion. Are there any other items that you would like to look at on the preschool? Any other proposed changes? So the vote on that too, by the way, was we've got 14 people here. Yep. All right, is there anything else on the preschool piece? You're prepared to vote to approve the preschool budget at this time? With no further amendments or conversation? All right then. All those in favor of the SAU 44 preschool budget? All right, and opposed? We're trying to see Mr. Wells. Okay.
No, I voted the other way.
Okay, so we've got 4 opposed, 10 in favor. That motion carries. All right, so we'll move on to our SAU 44 budget. Put this away. I'll put the new one.
I make a motion to accept the 2020 proposed SAU budget for a total of $480,415.78.
That's the.
Oh, sorry, I went too far. $1,309,004.43. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Who was the second?
Mr.
Okay, Mrs. Lowe.
have any other amendments about language in here and stuff when we were talking about it?
We had the up to language again.
Yeah, which I have.
We had some title changes that we discussed throughout. And again, the proposed budget was 1,309,004.43, correct? That was the motion?
Correct.
Okay.
There was a motion to amend it by $1 at one time.
We didn't,
Oh,
we
we
didn't,
didn't
we didn't mention that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. McGuigan,
I'd like to make a motion for an amendment
okay?
to add a new line titled Fund Balance Transfer into the revenue section for an amount of $68,402, and then reduce proportionally the district appropriations. So
Second.
by the appropriate amounts.
So we've got Mr. McGuigan and Mr. Ruth.
I'm just wondering if we want to include that $17,000 for this year, just to give more tax relief for this year, since the preschool budget's higher and this budget's higher. We have the money.
It's my thought that we would leave that line the way that it is so that it stays consistent over the budgeting, and then we could offer that relief by sending it back once we're done with the audit and we've made it. So it would still end up going back, but it would not affect the way the budget would look next year.
That was
Mr. Ruth?
Could we amend, not amend it, in other words, what if we wanted to take $100,000 out of that? Could we put that in, and that don't apply it to any one account?
Yeah, but
Debbie wants 17,000.
What was suggested at our audit committee meeting when we were talking about the different scenarios with the auditor, and what was legal, how to use this money.
I thought it cool. Now that I like. That's funny. So here's the thing. We are trying to specifically, if I understand correctly, we're looking to specifically pay for the software by adding a revenue line here. So I think if we start getting into adding numbers that don't correlate to that, it could be problematic. I think for our accounting purposes, we should be doing it to whichever number we decide, whether we want. I mean, there's a motion on the table right now for the 68 or 68,402. If someone wanted to make another motion after this one's voted on for the additional 17, that can be done as well. Okay. So is there any other discussion for the 68,402 with the understanding we're adding the revenue line, it's going to offset the expense, and we're going to have to redo our bottom line and our, no?
Bottom line doesn't change, but the
Well,
allocations.
the allocations
Your
will
district
change.
appropriations change, and I can give you those to the penny if you'd like.
Debbie, beyond the immediate tax relief, are there other benefits to taking out the 17 right now?
Why not have the money that belongs to the taxpayers be given back to them sooner than waiting another year by the time, or another 6 months, by the time we're done putting together the policy we're going to do and everything else. We can just have relief now. And it was suggested by the CFO who's on our committee that we do that.
He made it right.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is that when we get together on Friday, we can have a conversation, and there could be a direct disbursement to the districts, with the idea being it gets to the districts before
it was
that's what I thought we'd
the
get to
budget
faster.
policy is completed, so that you can bring it in anticipated into your books.
As long as we can get that done beforehand.
Right.
Right.
So there'd be a two-piece process with the audit committee. One would be to look at an appropriate number, vector back any so-called excess, and then come in with a policy behind it. So there'd be some relief in front, and then a policy that would take a little longer to calibrate.
We were hoping to get that for January. That amount.
Correct.
So that money could be
For the
felt this
for the
year.
first piece, but the policy, complete policy, may not be done till February or whatever. But the committee would be looking at, okay, what can you reasonably give back now for relief? They can budget it in locally, into your local budgets as anticipated, and then a policy to follow in the February.
So we're
timeframe.
hoping to have that done so people can go to their districts in their January meetings and say, we're hoping to have a certain amount of revenue come back.
If it can, again, if that was what was suggested, to do it in
Right.
2 pieces, and
Right,
now,
as long as we're gonna
but
do it
given
that
this
way.
money coming out of it,
Okay, as
We'll
long as
have
we're
to-
doing it that way, and then as long as the money will come back this year, then we don't need to take the 17 out now.
okay. Is it, yes, Mr. Patrick?
Can we have Superintendent Rooney tell us what the,
Yes.
the appropriations are?
What they would
Which is
change to?
$68,000 removed.
Northwood would become 360,482.32.
362,000.
362,482.32. Nottingham would become 484,330.26. And Stratford would become 377,789.55.
What are the percentages? What are the percentage changes? Do you have those?
Didn't calculate, I'm sorry.
Not yet.
Not calculated.
Yeah.
The apportionment percentages stay the same.
The apportionment
Those are-
percentages stay the same, but you're asking for the percentage change in the revenues, Mr. Patrick?
So it would increase your revenue $68,402.
It would, yeah, well, no, it doesn't do anything
It reduces
other than
revenue
reduce your appropriation.
From the appropriations, it adds revenue to a line that we're gonna create.
So a line, money's gonna come in from the unassigned fund balance,
Yep.
and the money that comes in from the unassigned fund balance
Is reducing.
reduces the amount that
allocated.
the individual towns need to pay, and by their percentage that's stated already in the notes, that's per, that's a statutory formula. Mr. Patrick, does that answer your question?
Well, what I'm looking at is if Stratford's at 377,789, last year was 383, so it drops it.
Yeah, I'll calculate it right now. Yeah.
Okay, they're gonna quickly calculate
Nottingham's still-
for you, Mr. Patrick.
That's fine.
Okay, but they're working on it right now.
I think it's like 2%. I think we're 2%, just doing it in my head.
Well, you're only at 0.85%, so.
Oh, that's Northwood.
That's Northwood.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong line, sorry. Oh, man.
No, sorry, wrong.
Yeah,
I think we went down 2%.
Yeah.
We went down 2%. We went down 2%.
No.
Correct.
Down to? I think it's down by 1.
You'd be down by about 1.5%, something like that.
Might as well do Northwood and Nottingham.
Okay?
All right, so that was Stratford.
That was Stratford's.
Okay, so down 1.5%.
Yeah,
From
probably.
the 393.
Down to 1.5%?
About 1.5 down,
Alright.
maybe it's change or something like that, but.
Yeah.
And in Nottingham, you'd be up about 0.6% from 6.27.
We'd be up.
About 0.6%. Instead of 6.27%, they'd be up about 0.6%. And in Northwood, you'll be down about 4.5%.
Okay, are there any other questions? Hearing none, are you ready to vote on this?
You vote the amendment first, right?
This is the amendment, so we're gonna vote on the amendment, and then we back in, if no other amendments occur, we would back into our original motion. Does everyone concur with that? Okay, so we're voting on the amendment to add the 68,402 as a revenue line, and you have the numbers read to you for what your new apportionments would be to pay in. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously with 14 in approval on that. All right. So now we are with our original motion. Do we have any other amendments to the proposed SAU budget other than the Scrivener type items for the up to changes and the title changes? Any other dollar amounts?
I have a question again about this HR increased by over $10,000. The 26.
Can you tell me what page that's on?
Yeah, it's on page 25 of your packet.
2 of 9.
2 of 9. It's the HR increases.
Yeah, got it.
So it's line 102520511105-03.
Right. It's just such a large increase in 1 year. I don't know.
So is it actually an increase or is it a change in job?
Do we have a motion for this? I forgot the discussion.
I would recommend that a motion be made one way or another if someone wishes to change that amount.
Well, I'd like to hear some more information about that one.
Okay.
You have to have a motion to get information,
Right.
because we already have a motion on the table for the budget.
Right, so we can have that open discussion, correct.
So, can we have some more
If this
information?
isn't a raise, this is redefining the job. Is that accurate?
So, she's going to be
Mr.
doing
Rooney,
something differently?
I would like to just ask Mr. Rooney or,
Linda reports to me.
okay?
There were two aspects to this change. One is that the job when it was first created was more of a clerical job. That's not the case today. Linda is a full-fledged HR manager. She does things like when you have second?
No names, just positions.
I'm sorry. The HR manager, I'm sorry I made a mention of name. That job supports things like contract negotiations, does all the budgeting for these budgets here, makes all the changes in benefits, tracks all of the personnel information. It's a full-fledged HR position. So that's one component. Second component is we went out and did a fairly extensive survey of other communities, similar SAU structures, and $50,000 is within the ballpark, but a little bit on the low side for what a lot of communities pay. But it's not something that we would be ashamed of. But it also takes into account Linda, or the HR manager. If we had to replace that person in that position, we're going to spend that money instantaneously just to be in the ballpark of competitiveness. So those were the two issues that really went into redefining the compensation.
So it's not it's not necessarily just an increase. It is the position has been
Totally
redefined.
changed.
Right. Mr. Wells?
I'm not making an amendment or anything. I'm just, can't we make that another line? Zero out that position and then make it a new line? And make it, this is a whole new job?
Oh, we'll redefine the title if you.
I think then there would be really no confusion. I mean, we're still being transparent because we're zeroing out that line and say, hey, we don't have that position
No, we
anymore.
would use the line.
And
We would
then-
change the title on the line. See what I'm saying?
You could do that too.
I think what Shane is saying that would provide cover for someone who.
Oh, okay. Looking at history.
Yes.
That's fine.
And would we be seeing a new job description for the role.
Linda has prepared that, or our HR manager. I have a hard time saying Mr. and Mrs.
And we've also implemented software, the frontline software, to alleviate some of the burden on that role as well.
It'll help, actually.
Yes.
It'll speed up the things like contract negotiation.
Well,
Efficiencies and.
Anyway.
So do we need to have a motion to
We're having a
change the line?
conversation to answer Mrs. Henriksen's questions about that line, and should anyone decide to make a motion or amendment around this, they can.
So, the position hasn't changed, it's changed since this person was initially hired, it's evolved, but it hasn't changed this year. She's doing the same things that she did last year.
No, that's not
No?
correct.
Okay, then what
The HR, whatever the title is here, the HR person, up till this year, has never handled all of the budgeting. In fact, has never handled any of the budgeting. That is a role that position should have. It tracks every single change that occurs in people's benefit selections, and it doesn't make sense to split up who does the budgeting for that from the person who actually knows all of the details for the underlying budgeting.
I understand that. Who did, without a name, a position, who did the budgeting previous to this year?
The previous BA.
Okay, so, previous, okay.
Are there any motions in regard to this? Any amendment?
Well, just to entertain my thought, would it be easier to make a whole new line for a job description, or just change the name?
I think for the reasons you cited earlier around tracking and the big change, it might make more sense to create a new one.
Okay, so I make a motion to create a new line for the salary HR assistant 2BA. What are we gonna call that, though? Because that line's already been used.
HR manager.
HR manager, to change it to make a new line to HR manager.
/ assistant to the BA.
/ assistants to the BA.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Wells and a second from Mr. Winslow to create a new line for this role entitled HR Manager / Assistant to the BA.
So is this a motion after another motion's sitting on the table, or is this an amendment?
It's just an amendment
Okay,
to the original motion.
thank you.
But you
Wanted to clarify.
you can have multiple amendments, you make them, you vote on them, and you back into your original.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So we've got our motion and our second and our amendment to make the line change. Are you ready to vote on that?
So we're adding one word to this line.
We'll make a whole new line.
Well, it says HR / assistant to BA now. So we're just putting manager.
Yeah, oh, yes, yeah.
We're
you're
adding
right there.
manager.
We're adding the word manager in there.
Yeah.
So what was the line called before? Because I know that this line has been changed, the title has been changed.
Well, no, the line as it stands in the budget is the line that's been there for a while.
So
Just
it
called
always said
salary HR / assistant to BA.
Okay.
It's just the BA did the budgeting.
Okay, are you ready to vote?
Yep.
All right, all those in favor of the new line? Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, so that carries unanimously with 14 in favor.
We got one abstention.
One
That's
abstention.
for the line.
You abstained.
Right,
I'm
it's
sorry.
just for creating the
That's
line.
just the line. Okay.
So 13, one abstention, no one opposed. So, Mr. Rooney just pointed out, you have a new line, you don't have any dollar value on the new line.
I'll make a motion to make that dollar line $50,000.
He's a big spender tonight, huh?
Can I suggest that you at the same time decrease the current line to $0?
Yeah. Or two.
And to decrease the current line to $0.
Okay, so we've got a motion to decrease the current line, proposed budget to 0, and increase the new line that was just voted upon to 50. This is an amendment. Mr. Winslow is the second. Mr. Wells made the motion.
The amendment.
Sorry?
The
The amendment. The amendment to the motion. All right, any discussion on that?
Yes, the note's gonna have to be changed. Just saying.
Someone gonna second that motion too.
Mr. Winslow. Okay. Mr. Wells,
Yes.
would you mind having your motion say 01 line, add 50 to the new line, and reflect updated notes as to the position
Okay, I
change?
make an amendment
He's good with that.
to.
You can just amend the one you've got.
Say
Just
yes.
say yes.
As stated.
Okay, Mr. Winslow,
Yes.
would you still, okay, so the motion is for $0 on the current line, 50 on the new line, and updated notes to reflect this new position. All right, do we have any other discussion on this?
So we added the word manager and gave her a $10,000.
Which is what was happening anyway, but now this line is gonna lay it out as a different role. All right, so all those in favor of this amendment, are you ready to come to a vote on this?
Yes.
All right, all in favor of this? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Opposed? 3. Okay. So that motion carries with the 50.
Herself?
All right. We still have our original motion. We've made some changes. Are there any other amendments to the original motion that we would like to make? Hearing none, are you prepared to vote at this time on the 2020 opposed SAU 44 budget as amended?
Yes.
Didn't we have the $1 placeholder?
I'll put it in.
No, I don't care.
Where
I'm
is
just
this?
saying, now I can't remember.
It's in the
Now I
furniture on
can't find
page
it.
8 and 9.
Yes. It was.
It's on furniture.
Oh, right.
On page 8 of 9.
So if it's gonna confuse and we're gonna vote and have 15 lines, forget it for a buck, forget it. Just one.
Well, it's the only placeholder that we don't have. I don't.
Where are we here?
10, 23, 20, 57, 37, 0-00, page number 11. I mean, page number 31, I'm sorry.
Okay. Mr. Ruth, your motion is?
To add that dollar for consistency, that we put $1 in the line. Now you'll have to tell me what line it is.
It's, Mr. Byrne just read it, 10-2320-57370-00.
I'll second his motion.
Okay, Dr. Shavda is the second. Mr. Ruth is he made the motion, and it's to add $1 to replacement furniture, line 10-2320-57370.
I got the.
Okay, so do we have a running total as to the original motion was made to approve the budget 1309004.43? We've made some changes, we have a new number.
The total budget changes.
$1.
$1.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay,
Would you like me to read the number to you?
yeah, we've got it. So that's the only dollar value change.
Well, we have to vote on the amendment first.
I'm sorry?
Oh, we have to vote on the
Vote on the
dollar.
amendment.
You have to vote on the dollar amendment.
Right, okay, so I'm just,
Yeah.
all right, so do we have any additional discussion on this $1?
Please no.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Don't discourage.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously with 14 in favor. All right, and the other amendments made are just neutral with the revenue line coming in and so forth. Okay,
Great, so I'm
so are
good.
you ready to vote on the 2020 proposed original motion?
Absolutely.
Right, I need to give you a new total.
And we have to change that to,
To 1,310,000.
10 or 9? 10.
Just went up
we
a
have the dollar.
I'm sorry,
So
no,
it's
we're not.
1310.
Wait, whoa, that's wrong. I just added wrong. Hold on.
$1 can bring it to 5. 1309.
1,309,005.
5.
40. Look at me trying to add $10,000 to your budget.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, so you heard the new amount, $1 up. Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? 12-2. Motion carries.
I'd like to point out that adding the dollar, we didn't go back and change the revenue by,
I have no
33
doubt.
cents. So
That's what I was laughing at.
Whatever the allocations are, that's your cents added to your.
Okay, so we covered that in the motion to add that revenue line and the new allocations. All right, so we can now move on from our budget. Our time worked pretty well last time, but our hearing ran much longer than previously hoped. Okay, so we move on to the approval of our minutes on November 26th from page 4.
Motion to approve the minutes from 11/26/18.
Second.
Okay, we've got the motion in the second. Do we have any changes?
I do. Well, I have a question. Does the board believe that the motion on page 4 to go into non-public should state the RSA that we went under? Because I stated it in my motion. It is mentioned on the non-public meeting minutes, but I didn't know if we should also have it in the motion. Public meeting.
I think it should be in, it's typically in the public meeting minutes, that's
So
where
you
it's
just need to
taken.
add under RSA 91-A:32 A and C. Thank you.
And then the polling piece of it too, which is all done in public for that piece going in. Okay. Is there anything on page 5? Moving on to page 6.
Make a motion for non-public minutes.
Oh, we're on
Nope.
page 6.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said number 6. I'm firing.
Ready to go.
I thought there was non-public session minutes. My bad.
Okay. Anything on 7? Okay. All right then, hearing no changes. All those in favor of the minutes as amended? All right. Anyone opposed or abstaining? How many abstentions do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and no one opposed. So it's 10 in favor, 4 abstentions, no one opposed. All right.
Motion to approve the non-public meeting minutes from November 26th.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second for the November 26th non-public meeting minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none. Yes, Mr.
Page 9, line 207. Members present, Makes sense. But
Mhm.
members that were absent, why would we list them if they're already,
I don't know, I've always listed them.
yeah, all right? Just caught my eye. No? Yes?
We're all
Any
good?
reason why we haven't?
There
Typic-
was a meeting that Dr. Shelda came in later. So
I
listed
came
her as
later
a
on
runner.
the stage, so I missed the non-public, but I was there for most of the time.
All right.
So they just didn't roll call in, right? I mean, but they were, you're saying they were present at the public meeting, but not at the, because not everybody that was absent is listed there from, you know what I mean, what I'm saying? Not everybody that was absent from the meeting, the whole meeting, was listed there, just 2 people.
You know what I just noticed? I'm listed, this was the one I missed, right, last time? Yeah, I was absent.
Yeah, it says you're absent.
Where?
It says the lines.
They're the non-public, they're looking at the non-public list.
Here,
not
no,
the-
they're talking about,
beginning of the
but
page.
you're
All right,
not-
can we
I
go,
think
come
the
back?
minutes.
Okay, so we're looking, guys, at page 9. We're looking at our
noticed, I'm sorry.
documentation of our non-public
Sorry,
session.
didn't mean to be-
Thank you for coming. Members present. I think the roll call in, isn't it normal to just, typical to just say, here's your roll call in, those are the individuals that were there.
Yep.
And then we have a roll call out, and those are the individuals that are roll calling out. Is that not typical documentation? Yes?
Sue, did you hear Amy say on the first page, that she's listed as being here and she's not here? She wasn't there?
That's what I was saying.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just realized that it said.
All right, that's fine. So we'll amend that. I apologize, I did not hear that.
I mean, I've always marked them,
Okay.
Who's got that correction?
All right, so we've got that correction. Okay. So again, it's the board needs to determine how do you want your non-public documented. Typically, it shows your roll call in the public meeting minutes. It shows your time going in. You have your minutes, and then you have your roll call coming out, which is done in your non-public meeting minutes, and those people that are listed are
That
listed.
sounds good.
And we did
Do
that.
it that way. Do it that way. That's the good way.
Okay, so is that what the board's wish is?
Sure.
Okay, so that's how we'll do it.
Can you explain that in layman's terms? I totally went over my head.
So we roll called in, we were in public, and everybody said yes.
Yeah.
Or that was there. And then we go into the non-public meeting, we have the meeting minutes that you put together, which are fine. And then while we're in non-public, we roll call out.
So we just roll out underneath.
Okay.
And that shows in the non-public session, and then we're back in our regular session. Okay, so we make those changes. All right, so all those in favor of the non-public meeting minutes on page 9 as amended? All right, anyone abstaining? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You always say what you can.
Bueller?
So it's,
Just like, yeah.
anyone opposed? All right, okay, we'll fall apart. 8 and 6, Amelia. Come on, guys.
Come on,
I know we've
focus.
had a
We're
long,
almost through it.
this is a hard night, because we had our
So
hearing.
close, guys. In the workshop,
Okay, so
you're
the
24. Very rarely.
8 and 6. Abstaining. No one
Do we
opposed.
need to go on, into non-public?
I do not think that we have a need to go into non-public this evening, but let me just see if anything has come up.
Manifest or not circulating.
Yes.
Where are
They
they?
just
Okay,
started.
guys, can we just come back here for a sec? We do not have a need for non-public this evening. Mr. Rooning has asked if we could excuse the administrators at this point.
You don't want the financial report?
I can do it.
Okay, and you, what would,
So it would help these guys in Northwood if the 2 of them could go upstairs and make budget adjustments because they need to adjust the Northwood budget because after your meeting, we have a meeting and they need to adopt.
Yes.
So would that be okay with the board? If
Yes,
they-
yes,
And
please.
given some magic, they might even be able to come down with no changes and everything else to the SAU budget for you. Right now, they're going to work with numbers.
I gotta get you to Northwood. I'm not,
Yeah, Northwood's first.
there's too many no changes.
Right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Quick question.
Okay, so we're all set. Yes. Sharon.
So I know we just had a public hearing, but do you want to call for public comments just in case? Because I think we went past
Yes, we did. Do we have any public
Yeah,
comment?
I'll say it now rather than at the end. I saw,
Thank you.
I wish I had seen advocacy for the taxpayer from this joint board like I saw for the teachers tonight. That's all I'll say.
Thank you. Alrighty. And we will now, the manifests are circulating?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, if there are any questions, we can just, note them and we'll get them answered. The business administrator's report is the review of the financials on page 10.
So if you want to go to page 10. You can see in your revenues that your indirect cost revenues have started to come in. Your IDA preschool reports have been coming in regularly and your other grants too. So you'll see that number start to come down. Other than that, everything remains about the same.
Scott?
Yes?
When I was saying the bottom line here, page 7, so are we anticipating at this point having a $49,000 surplus?
No.
Okay.
Where are you, Debbie? I'm sorry.
That bottom line.
707.
707.
So what I asked the business office to do
Okay.
was to go through and reconcile all the lines. And they did that. But at that time, you hadn't hired your part-time replacement for your receptionist. So that's not encumbered yet. Also, we don't have a bill for your audit yet.
Okay.
So your audit fees aren't done in there because we don't know what that's going to be. You also, because of the...
That should be budgeted.
We had a...
Budget.
You have a budget number, but you have to remember that last year you hired the old auditor to do an analysis, right? And then analysis wasn't done by the end of last year.
Right.
So that comes out of that line, so you're likely to see an overspend in your audit line just based on that. Other than those two things, that's all I can see right now. But you've still got PD and mileage and things like that.
I'm going to advocate for the taxpayers right now, and I'm going to ask that if we have a surplus, that we try to turn that surplus back to the taxpayers, and not start finding furniture or other things to spend it on.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any questions on the SAU financials?
So not all the encumbrances are in the...
Well, we can't encumber until we get a bill.
Yeah, right, so the anticipated balance. So we know, though, the bill from Melanson. And
If I can
we have
find that.
a contracted amount for Plaza.
Right. And I think Melanson, we paid a portion of that from last year's budget because we paid them in payments. I held the last payment back until they completed the audit.
So far, and this doesn't include your new auditor, you've spent $3,900.
For Melanson's.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the new audit, we have a budgeted amount. However, they did say they came twice and we weren't prepared for them. We're hoping we're not going to be charged more for that. They brought a whole crew.
Well, I hope not, because the first time that they came and we weren't prepared for them is nobody sent the doc list to the business administrator. So he didn't have the list of documents that they needed, and then halfway through that first day, they realized that they had sent that to the old business administrator and not to the new business administrator.
And it didn't get, so before she left, she didn't forward it.
Right.
But the other thing too was that the trial balance they were looking at was through May, not through June.
Right, we had to straighten all that out.
Then you said they came back 60 days later and you still weren't ready.
I guess I'd have to talk to Mr. Campbell about that tomorrow, but from my recollection, they had a fair amount of work to do with that second session, and they did a fair amount today too, so.
Was it that they weren't ready, or was the second one when
I think that-
when there was that problem with you spent so much time on the phone with the tech company?
No, they weren't ready.
That's got nothing, yeah.
Okay.
Also, there was an additional expenditure for the MS stuff, or was that?
Right, but that was training, so that'll come out of a different.
Oh, the training line, okay, okay. Alrighty. We'll move on to the preschool financials.
Preschool financials, you can see your revenues, that your tuition's coming in for your parents, that your district contribution has been taken out. So you're about $2,800 off in revenue right now, but it's still early, so you're likely to see an increase in revenue. The other lines, the salary lines, remain unchanged from the last time. One thing that I did find on page 3, and Mr. Byrne is trying to chase this down on page 19 of your packet, page 3. If you go up to contracted services, you can see the 27,993. Let me see that. Mr. Burns, in the process of chasing down that purchase service agreement from Stratford Learning Center, it seems it was missed when all the PSAs came. Either they didn't print it, or but we know that's a real expense. But we also know that expense is only going to be $19,000 roughly instead of $27,000. So we're just waiting for a PSA to come in to encumber. And that's about all the issues that I saw in the preschool financials.
Any questions on the preschool financials? All right. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Now, the page 22 is not, this is an error.
Yeah, Amy sends her apologies. We hired Mr. Houghton off hours to work with a student from another district, and that intent to hire got stuck in the SAU packet instead of the other district packet. So really irrelevant to our discussion.
Okay, so we'll take that right out. And then we've already had the preschool and SAU budget conversation. I think we had a nice robust hearing as well. It was a good conversation.
Isn't Jared an SAU employee?
Yes.
So he doesn't work here full time?
He works here full-time. After hours, he's tutoring a student from one of the local districts.
Oh, okay.
So that intent to hire needs to go down. They know it's coming, but...
Okay. So under new business, we've got the negotiation and evaluation process that we wanted to talk about. Our evaluation is due in February. And our negotiation, our current contract with the superintendent ends on June 30th, 2019. So we have an evaluation team assembled by vote at the local districts. So did you want, typically what we do is those districts get together, they fill out an evaluation, and that is then compiled, and it kind of goes with the policy that we have, and the joint chair compiles it all. We would need a preliminary evaluation, self-evaluation from the superintendent. So is there any thoughts, conversation on that?
So we have a negotiated...
Well, Mr. McGuigan, I just want to finish he's raised his hand to speak.
Well, we talked about changing the evaluation process, using a new tool. I just think it's maybe too late in this year to be doing that, but something we should look into doing next year. See if I can
The
set something right
tool?
up. Yeah.
Would you like to ask the team of people that are currently involved?
Oh, is there stuff going on?
Well, each district has assigned someone to work evaluation, right? And then they would bring.
I don't think we did, so.
I think so.
I thought it was.
It's probably me. I don't think we did anything. That's what I'm
I
trying
thought it
to
was
say.
stated that it was the chairs of each local.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what typically, all I'm saying is that maybe while you're discussing with your local districts, if there's a conversation around the tool, it could happen there as well, and then that could be discussed with the superintendent as well, once, just put it as part of the discussion? Does that work?
So
All right.
will the chairs, the 4 chairs, be also the negotiating team?
That's, last year.
That's how it usually is.
Right, so it's up to the board how you want to do that, but what we would have to do, I think we need to kind of lay out our timeline, when we want to have these things done. And it seemed to me maybe you do your eval first and then your negotiation. So if you could get your evaluation done instead of by February, get it done by January, and each of the boards, we'll have to sit down at the joint level and talk about the negotiation points in non-public.
Just put that on the agenda for next week.
Is that what? Do you have
Whatever we decide on, I was going to request we put it on this calendar that we have.
Yes. Okay. That
And
sounds
also
good.
going back to November and adding in that we should discuss, because I think at this point right now we look at renewal we have to have a decision about renewal in December. So on the calendar for November, that should be the discussion.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
And also I wanted to add, possibly if the board is inclined for like March or April to talk about the policy for the preschool teacher pay, and also talk about maybe a tool change for and goals for the eval.
And could we maybe, one thing I would like to suggest, and it's entirely up to you, but as part of the self-evaluation, and as part of the evaluation that we'd be bringing forward, maybe we could suggest some just preliminary, start the process maybe and get that surfaced. What do you guys think? It's up to what you think.
Well, if we have to deliver the evaluation in February, and we're going to meet as a joint board in early January, mid-January.
I think we'd probably want to try to get the evaluation delivered in January, and then have the negotiation done right on the heels of it, moving into early February. And then in March, you're talking about the goals, and you'd have all that information from the self-evaluation and the conversations. And
I think that everything should be done before March, because if the board changes,
I agree.
makes
I agree.
Okay.
So that everything's done by our February 11th meeting, that makes sense.
That's why I think changing the tool and stuff is not something we should be doing now.
Right, I don't
We're
see how
running-
we have
run
time
out
to
of
change the
time.
tool.
Right, we don't.
We're going to be delivering it in June. So that's why I was thinking in March or April, that should be a discussion about, when we talk about goals, we should also talk about the evaluation tool.
okay, that makes good sense.
Well, goals coming right after March makes sense too.
Right.
That's when we have new people.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so we'll put this on the agenda for the January meeting as well? Okay.
And is the understanding that the individual boards will be doing what between now and then?
The individual board should be taking the tool, which is listed with the policies, and getting together, and either filling them out individually and then coming together and filling out the one together, or I think Northwood has the conversation all at once, but we would go into a non-public and fill it out, and then the joint person will take it and combine it. And prior to that, we'll have our self-evaluation to look at,
So,
to work with all together.
can I ask that the self-evaluation gets distributed via packet to the local districts before then? 'Cause we may only have one meeting between now and then in Northwood.
Okay,
So.
so the self-evaluation would come before, so we can get the process rolling.
I can have it done for the new year.
Okay, so for January.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so are we comfortable with this process discussion and the timeline stated?
Yes.
Okay, can somebody just clarify what's going on the next SAU agenda?
On the next SAU agenda, we'll just take this up again. We'll list, I think we should try to put in the packet our timelines that we've discussed here. And then we can maybe would the self-evaluation be ready by then? In
Yes.
January? So we would talk with you in non-public about the self-evaluation,
Yeah.
and then after that, the local districts will take up.
All right, so in your next three packets, I'm going to prepare the information and put it in your next three local packets for you. Yes?
The self?
No, the
The-
other stuff, so you have it.
The
So you can
timelines.
start to think about it.
Okay. Mr.
And then I'll do a self-evaluation over Christmas vacation, and then have that right after New Year's.
For the January meeting.
That's one and the same for Stratford.
Should the self-evaluation be done before the local boards complete their evaluations, or is that?
That's what, yeah, I was
Or
gonna
do they
ask,
go
are
at
we
the same
doing
time?
them at
Well,
the
I mean,
same
the first
time?
time we can get it is at our first meeting in January, which has been moved up, right? So we should be able to,
It's the 10th or whatever, right?
the 10th, or,
Says the
it's
14th.
the 14th.
Sorry, right, 14th.
I think the boards could begin their process, the individuals, and then the boards can come together and reflect on the information they also have on the 14th.
So then we.
Well, Mr. Runing could give his self-evaluation in the board's first January meetings. Does everyone have a meeting in January before the 14th?
Yes,
So we can
that's,
see the
that's what I was.
self-evaluation
Okay.
then.
Right.
All right, so the self could go, how do you feel about that?
That's fine, but it might not go in your packet if your packet goes
No,
out
it shouldn't
before
go in
the
our
third.
packet.
It shouldn't, yeah. we'll
Yeah,
just
Well, I
bring
put it
it
in your non-public
non-public.
packet.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as
So
you
you-
understand, I'll bring that with me.
So you bring
Yeah.
to the first local district meetings in January.
Mhm.
Mr. Patrick?
Okay.
I'm trying to think when our first meeting in January would be.
I think it might be the 16th,
It would be December 26th plus 2 weeks.
which I think is the 16th.
Is the 8th?
That's their first meeting in Stratford?
No, the 10th.
The 9th?
It would be the 9th. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
the 9th. It would be before, thank you.
Okay, so that would help us on the 14th here, if
Yep.
everybody's, okay.
And probably it'd be good if we had just the tool along with the self-evaluation, because I don't think we're gonna have time to do the evaluation before.
I'm going to put the tool
We
out.
can talk about it.
I'm going to put the tool out in the policy in your next package, your next local package. That way you have them,
Yeah.
right? And then I'll work on a self-evaluation over Christmas. And then you'll have that either in your non-public packet or hand carried.
You would have to bring it to this Wednesday's meeting first,
Okay.
because our packet's already up for our next meeting, local meeting.
We would just be hand carrying it.
Yeah, and I won't be there this Wednesday.
Okay.
I can email it.
So does that work for everyone? It's a plan, you're all good with that?
So we are at our local board meetings going to discuss it before,
We come back here.
right?
Right, and then we get back here, ready to roll. Okay, the
I
other,
still need to clarify, I'm sorry.
okay, I'm sorry.
All right, so then, on the timeline, we had superintendent renewal in November, and then preschool teacher policy?
Yes.
Yes.
When did you want to do that?
April.
All right, I got it.
No,
Thank
we
you.
said we wanted to do it before our reorg. So February?
You wanted to do the preschool negotiation thing, like the salaries, comp?
It doesn't matter?
I don't think it has to be.
Okay, doesn't matter. Sometime in the spring?
I put it in February.
February then, if we can see if we
That's
can
being
get
put on
it
the open items on the calendar, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that would make more sense, because
Right.
it wouldn't be.
It's a one-time thing.
Yeah.
done. Okay. On item 10B, the letter of intent, I started printing quickly. I followed the language in the contract that says the SAU will notify the professional employee in writing no later than December 1st, 2017, whether it wishes to enter into successor employment agreement. And then the employee will do the same. We did that verbally at our December meeting. So I just have a letter
No,
here.
November meeting.
I'm sorry, I apologize, at our November meeting. So I just have this letter, I printed before I left, and of course, paper ran out, and I didn't have a lot of time, so I'm just gonna pass this down the two sides, and I think it's a public document, really, that ties to the contract, so. We can have it signed by everyone, we can have it, however, the way it's written right now, I sign it if you approve it, but, so make the edits that you want, and I can rewrite it and, do what you want with that. So that's circulating. And to give you some time, maybe we'll just go on to some quick committee reports, and then you can tell me what you want to change on that.
I think this will be quick. Can I just make a motion that we approve Chairman Levison to sign the letter and deliver it to the superintendent?
Are you okay with the letter?
Yes, the circulating letter, this is fine.
Let's, make sure that
Oh,
Kathy
sorry.
has a chance to read it.
So we have a motion by Mr. McGuigan.
I seconded it.
And Ms. Henriksen?
Okay. No changes needed?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, so that motion carries unanimously, no one's abstaining. Okay. So we've got 14 in favor there. The committee reports, I think we kind of gave you a lot of what our audit committee did. There was a lot of conversation around procedure, around the unassigned fund balance, looking at process, policies. It's been a very good group. Mr. Campo was with us. He brought his team as well. One area that continues to come up that I wish that people need to think about, we handed out what Melanson gave you for items at the last audit. One of them is the student activity accounts. They're recommending that those be looked at on a probably monthly basis because they're a high-risk area. They're an area where you need to review whether the items going through them are correct. It's not necessarily intentional, but there are rules around them. And that's an area that they audit closely. Both audit teams said that. The letters were given out to folks. Those are, whoever's mailed those back, they've gone back. Control issues around cash, treasury, looking at the payment cycle, so when you pay out, and then tightening the bill backs up to correspond to that. Policies, he mentioned the importance of the board being a truly governing body. This is a quote. Policies should be renewed at least once every 3 years, that's barring new things, so that board members are familiar with each policy. So you try to cycle through your policies with your board members so they're very familiar. Manifest signatures should be, nobody should be, by law, expending funds without the manifest signed beforehand. So, the agreed upon procedures, we've looked at that with Melanson. They noted the queuing up of cash flow issues in June. And Mr. Rooning is aware of that, had made some suggestions and noted some items on that. And that's really about it. So we're going to be getting together on Friday again, and we'll probably be meeting every Friday for a bit until we can kind of come up with a policy and some recommendations. And then, I'm sorry.
It's hoped that by the January meeting, there's more clarity around the unassigned fund balance.
Right.
So, and I don't know, we've kept you apprised, I think,
Yep.
as we go.
Yep, and I'll be joining you this Friday, right? Yes. I scheduled it in.
Yeah, so at least for part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't hear
Just a quick question. What kind of review of the student activity fees are they looking for? Like something where we can get it in our packet? If we let the local
Well, I took a note. It would make sense that we include that information with your monthly financials.
Yeah.
So you can see the expenditures, and you'd have to look at the statutes around it and what's an appropriate expenditure of it, so it's going to be a learning process for everyone at
One of the
first.
things that he did say that was really interesting, we have a problem, and you probably do every year, with how we pay our officials for games, for sport games, because we have to pay, our they come back, our auditors come back every year and complain that is not the way to do it.
Never seen that.
He suggested that we could have an official special account, because the money does come out of the student activity account. And you put money in there for for the,
No,
it comes up.
we transfer it in.
It sounds like a person.
He said to put it in the,
That's a board.
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's just, if it's not something everybody's struggling with, you're not, you just write checks to your officials? They don't audit you for that?
No, we have a problem.
I don't remember.
We have a problem with that every
We
year.
do.
Every year. We have a problem with that. Yeah. This person's not paying.
Haven't seen it in any
Never come
of our
up.
reports. It's not
A major problem, though, just the way we do accounting, I believe that's the problem.
It's a
And we've had the,
Yeah, I don't understand what the problem is with it.
So I think it will be detailed when you get your letters on your,
Another write-up by your auditor.
yeah. So they'll talk to you about it when you get the letters in more detail, and they can make some recommendations as well when they present, and then you can get a process in place that you review them on a regular cycle. I think that would all be good. I wanted to let you know that I have in front of me the memorandum of agreements for the part-time receptionist, which has been approved. The change, I don't see a title here, I'm trying to use titles. For the SAU bookkeeper / part-time receptionist that we discussed and took into consideration. And then the third one was for a preschool paraprofessional for 145 days per year. And that was previously approved at the board, but I want you to know they're here, and unless anyone has any different understandings, they would be signed this evening. All right. I think we talked about our open items in conjunction with the audit committee is working, like you said, management committee working on the schedule piece in a joint board format. And our timeline, maybe we'll update and bring forward as it is at this point for review for the next meeting. And then for future agenda items, any hot items that the board would like to have taken up for our future agendas. I'm sorry.
I said just the stuff we already discussed.
Okay. All right. So is there anything else? We've got our future meeting dates, January 14th, February 11th, and March 11th. And we do not have a need of a non-public. And we don't need to discuss anything of this here. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to, before we close our meeting?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, then, all those in favor?
Yay!
So we adjourned at 9.